CD 7.
I've got stretch marks. I've got boobs that look better with a bra on, cellulite and wobbly bits. I haven't done all the pelvic floor exercises that I should do. She winced. Maybe that's too much information. But I think you should know I'm far from perfect. He put his hands on her shoulders. I don't need you perfect, he said to her. I'm happy that you're here. Have you been with older women before? Aside from kissing you the other day? He smiled. Not that I'm aware of. Joe, I'm a grown man, but I'm 10 years older than you. He shook his head. Our age doesn't matter. You're beautiful. You haven't got a fetish, a mother complex. I told you you're nothing like my mother. You're nothing like any mother I know. He unbuttoned the top of her dress. His fingers stroked down her chest, between her breasts. He kissed her lips, lightly, and her chin, the side of her neck. She tilted her head helplessly, her body thrumming. I'm probably braver in text, too, he murmured into her ear. But maybe we can be brave together. How? His smile was crooked. Let's do what you said you wanted to. Exactly as you said you wanted to do it. I don't know if I remember every word. Why don't you start with unbuttoning my shirt? She laughed, nervously. It hasn't got buttons on it. Then take it off. He gazed at her, with the touch of a smile still on his lips, his blue eyes sexy, a hint of stubble on his chin. His room was bare, unmarked. Anything could happen in it. I want you to, he said. I really want you to. Joe swallowed, and then she grasped the hem of his T-shirt with both hands. She had undressed people before, men before, but not so boldly, not whilst talking about it in full daylight, her eyes open to see everything and be seen. She pulled his T-shirt up over his head. He raised his arms to help her, and she saw the dark hair under them. She didn't know what to do with his T-shirt once it was off him, so she handed it to him, and he dropped it on the floor. He wasn't smiling now. He looked very serious. Then you said you wanted to touch me, he said. She reached out a hand. Her fingers were unsteady. She touched his bare shoulder, the smooth, warm skin with the bones and muscles underneath. Slowly, she slid her palm downwards. He had hardly any hair on his chest. She touched the soft jut of his nipple, the ridges of his ribs. His belly was firm, moving rapidly with his breaths. She slipped the tip of her finger into his navel. Then I said I wanted to undress you. He did, button by button. He slipped her dress off her shoulders and let it fall next to his T-shirt. He did not kiss her, but looked at her. He unfastened her bra and eased it from her. He pushed her knickers down her legs, kneeling as he did so. Jo could barely breathe. Her cheeks were aflame. She looked down at herself and saw the pale, loose skin of her belly, the mark her bra strap had left. She saw Marcus's curly head next to her hip, felt his breath on her, wondered if he would kiss her or touch her, and take what they did into his hands so she wouldn't have to think about it. He stood. He looked her up and down, and Jo had to fight to keep from apologising. There was a mirror behind her. She had seen it when she'd come in the room. She would not look into it. She would try to see herself in his eyes. She saw his throat working as he swallowed. Now, he said, his voice hoarse. You wanted to push me down on the bed. She did. She straddled him, her palms braced against the hollows of his shoulders. She felt him hard against her, and she looked down into his face, into his eyes, which never wavered. Later, much later, she followed him downstairs, wearing his T-shirt and her lacy knickers. Her thighs were sore, her skin rubbed into contentment. She had glimpsed her face in the mirror before she left the bedroom, her flushed cheeks, her rumpled hair. Marcus went into the kitchen to put on the kettle, and she checked her phone in her handbag, which she had dropped on the floor near the front door, and then wandered into his living room. Like all of the rest of the house, it had white walls and a neutral carpet, the default new house blank decor. He had a squashy sofa and a scarred coffee table covered with folders of marking, a television, and a stereo with a record deck. The CD he'd been playing when she came in had long since finished. There was a large cardboard box near the sofa, apparently filled with newspaper. She reached for it to see what was inside, but stopped herself. "They're photographs," he said, coming into the room. "I haven't had the chance to put them up yet." He gave her one of the mugs he held. "Your cup of tea. Finally." "I think I liked what we were doing even more than a cup of tea." She curled up on the sofa, and he nudged beside her, his arm around her shoulders. He was only wearing his boxer shorts. She couldn't resist running her hand up his thigh, watching how the hairs, stroked against the grain, stood up and clung to her palm. "Where are the kids?" he asked. "With their father?" I was too distracted to ask. "With Honor. My mother-in-law. She hasn't rung, so I assume they're fine." She hoped they were fine. Guilt threaded into her gut. She could run back and check. But actually, Honor was right. She did deserve some time for herself. "What are the photographs of?" "You're welcome to have a look." She knelt by the box and lifted the framed photos out, one by one, dreading the photographs of old girlfriends. But they were landscapes, bleak and rocky, ice and water, some black and white, some colour, a blue interior of ice, a red and black lava field, a scooped-out green valley. "You took these?" "I've spent quite a few holidays in Iceland. I love the geology." "This one." He reached past her and took out a photo. It was white and blue curves, like the spiral of a snail shell. The scale was impossible to determine. "I have a thing about glaciers." "So the teaching is a hobby?" "The teaching is a job. The glaciers are a hobby." "The mass, and how slowly they move, and how they change the environment. Mountains literally moved by water. It puts everything in perspective." He laughed. "All the rest of my family like to go somewhere warm on holiday. My mum calls me a penguin." "Penguins aren't in Iceland." "Well, my mum isn't always scientifically accurate." He put the photo down. "Anyway, there, you've discovered my dark secret." "That's it? Glaciers?" "You're right. Glaciers aren't a secret. My Year 7s are sick of me banging on about them." He grinned at her. "You're my only secret." "I think you're mine, too." "That means we have a lot in common." "No," she thought, "we have each other in common, and that is all." She picked up the photo he'd laid down. "You should put these up. They're beautiful." He gestured at the clean walls. "It's my fear of damaging the house. Also, I haven't got a great eye. I've had them framed, but I wouldn't know where they'd look best." "I'll help you do it," she said, and then blushed. Here she was, at his house for the first time, having made love with him once and exchanged some texts, and she was pushing herself forward into his life, offering to help decorate his house, to help him become domesticated, as if she were his mother. "Like you need more jobs to do, right?" he said. "Come here." She went willingly onto his lap. He slipped his hand underneath his T-shirt that she wore. "You want to again?" she asked. And again, if we have time. He nuzzled her ear. Tell me a secret. Something about you I don't know yet. I'm only a mum, she said, kissing his shoulder, the hollow of his collarbone. I'm not the kind of person who sneaks out on a Saturday to meet her lover. I'm not either, he said. But now we both are. He laid her back against the cushions. When she let herself into her house, even later than that, her body weary and singing, Oscar and Iris were in the same position, bent over the tablet. You're back, said Honor. Did you have a good time? Marcus's hands on her breasts, his mouth on the curve of her hip. Suddenly she was conscious of her chin and neck. They must be red from the stubble on Marcus's face. Yes, very nice, she said, putting her hand over her chin, in a pose she hoped looked thoughtful rather than embarrassed. Have you had lunch? Not yet. Joe perched on the arm of the sofa, next to Oscar, and ruffled his hair. So fine and soft. You haven't been playing on these the whole time, have you? The birds hate the pigs, Mummy. No, said Iris. We've been fine, said Honor. It's just, normally we try to limit screen time. She winced as she said it. She knew it was her own guilt talking. Why? It's not recommended for children to spend too much time on the computer or watching television. It's also not recommended for children to be abandoned whilst their mother carries on a torrid affair with a next-door neighbour. I usually give them an hour a day. The ability of the middle classes to punish themselves is incredible. If tablets had existed when I was their age, I would never have got off the sofa, and I hardly think that I'm intellectually disadvantaged. Jo rubbed her chin. I'll get lunch, shall I? Chapter 27. Lydia. This is what love feels like. It's a burning in your chest. A free fall through whooshing air. It's an itch in your skin which can only be soothed by touching. It's how you store up every little word and expression and hoard it for later, when you can go through it in your head and look for the coded messages. It makes you greedy and jealous and resentful and sad. It makes you hate the person you were born as. A jigsaw with a piece out of place where your heart should be. No, I want to think about the good parts, not the bad parts. Love gives everything another meaning, another layer on top. It means that even a wave or a smile is significant. It makes food taste better. It makes air delicious. It makes the blood pumping through your body feel like a miracle. And when you think about it, how unlikely is it that out of all the atoms in the universe, they have somehow combined to make both you and the person you love, and that chance has brought you together to be on the same patch of earth at the same time as each other? There must be a million reasons why you should never have existed, why you should never have met. And yet you did. One morning at the school gates, when neither of you had anyone but each other. Sometimes I think about fate. If Dad hadn't died, if Mum hadn't married Richard, I would never have met Avril. Maybe I would have been happier. We would never have moved, or maybe we'd have gone back to Cambridge, and maybe I would have met a girl who could have loved me back. Maybe I'd be out. Maybe I would have told Dad, and he would have told Mum, and everything would be calm now, no scene or worries. Maybe I would feel normal, or as normal as I ever could. But I would never have met Avril. Never seen her smiling at me across a crowd. Never shared secrets and bags of crisps. Never linked arms, or held hands, or breathed next to each other at night. And the thought of that is worse than the thought that I've missed maybe being happy. Maybe in another time, another place. Since I've met her, every April has been her month. I haven't told anyone. Like so many things about Avril, it's my secret. I watch the trees and flowers bud and spring into new life, and I'm always happy. It feels like the world is starting over again, and that something has been renewed in me. If I love her, if I truly love her, I want to love her no matter what. I want to understand it for the miracle it is. I want to love her without being greedy, without being jealous, in a pure way, in the best way, without any consideration of my own happiness. Can you even love that way in the real world? When you're itching and burning and hurting, when all you want to do is scream and kick things and rail against the fact that Avril was born without that thing that I have that makes me love her. This is what love feels like. It feels hopeless and helpless, like holding onto a slippery rock in a churning sea. And I wouldn't give it up for anything. I wouldn't. "What are you writing about?" asked Bailey, and Lydia shut her notebook. "Nothing. Just some formulae." The bell had gone, and everyone else had left the maths classroom. But Bailey lingered by Lydia's desk. "It looked like words, not numbers." "I think better in words. Sometimes I write down the problems in words so I can understand them better." She stood and began shoveling her books into a bag. "I was wondering if you'd like to come over to mine today, maybe after school," said Bailey. Today? Seriously? Their last day before exam leave? Their last day of proper school ever before exams in the sixth form? "I don't know. I think I'm doing something with Avril." She was doing something with Avril. A party at Sophie's house while her parents were working late. It had been planned weeks ago. Harry would be there. "Avril could come too. I like Avril." "Everyone likes Avril," snapped Lydia, and walked out of the classroom, Bailey tagging along with her. "Well, just let me know," said Bailey. "You could stay for tea and stuff if you wanted. My mum makes this really good pizza. It's gluten-free, but you'd never know it." From the corridor behind them, a burst of laughter. It sounded like Erin's. "Maybe," said Lydia, and as soon as they got to the door of the maths block, she peeled away, walking rapidly across the schoolyard towards geography, even though it was break. She wanted a few minutes on her own. If worst came to worst, she could go into Mr. Graham's room. He never locked it, and she could pretend to be doing some extra revision. A group of Year Sevens came chattering out, and after them, Mr. Graham. He was reading something on his phone, and when he saw Lydia, he stopped, staring at her for a minute as if he couldn't quite place her. Then he smiled, as he always did. The younger kids called him Mr. Grin, because everyone knew the rule that new teachers weren't supposed to smile for the entire first term they taught at a school, so that all the students would think they were mean. Mr. Graham had smiled right away, in his very first tutor session with Lydia's group. He wanted to be liked. It was a weakness in a teacher, and he got some stick from some of the boys in her year because of it. But you couldn't exactly tell a teacher they should be less nice. They had to figure out those things for themselves. "How's it going, Lydia?" he asked her, and she smiled back at him. A fake smile, but he'd never know that, because it was the same fake smile she'd been giving everyone. "Good," she said. "Were you coming to see me about something?" He stuffed his phone in his pocket, almost guiltily, and Lydia wondered if he'd been looking at porn on it or something. Glacier porn. Girls posed on icebergs. She and Avril had a joke about it, like they had a joke about Miss Drayton's inappropriate fixation with all the sexual metaphors in every single thing they read. "No," she said. "I was just going to dump my stuff before the lesson." "Oh, OK. Go ahead, be my guest. I'll be back in a minute." He smiled again, even broader than the last smile, and walked off rapidly to mainline caffeine or whatever it was that teachers did in their staff room during break time. She watched him go, and then slipped round the building past the shrubbery, to the place near the fence where sometimes people went for fags. She didn't recognise them at first. It was just 2 blue jumpers and a mass of dark hair leaning against the brick building, on the blank side without any windows. Then she saw his black trainers, her long legs, his hand up her top, rucking it up so that Lydia could see a glimpse of smooth belly. The abandoned bags with the keychain Lydia had given Avril lying on the ground. Then she saw their faces. Properly saw their faces, eyes closed, mouths pressed together. The bottom fell out of her stomach. She bit her lip to stop from making any noise and backed away. Their faces hung in front of her, the little moist sounds their lips were making as they snogged. Her back hit something. At first she thought it was a tree or a post, but then it laughed and she smelled stale cigarettes, and it was Winston Anthony saying, "Watch where you're going." Lydia fled to the girls' cloakroom. There was a queue. There was always a queue at break time, and more girls standing at the mirrors doing their hair, but she pushed through and took the final cubicle, ignoring the protests of the other girls. She sat on the toilet with her head in her hands while they complained loudly about her. She thought she might be sick. She knew they snogged. She knew it was happening. Why was it so bad to see it? His hand up her top, the way his legs were spread and planted on the ground as if he owned it. She sat there until the end of break, and then went to geography, where Mr. Graham said something to her that she didn't hear, and where Avril came in late, breathless and pink-cheeked. She poked Lydia on the shoulder as she passed, and Lydia just looked down at the practice exam that Mr. Graham had given back to her, as if she were more interested in his pencilled-in comments than in anything else. It was the last day of proper school, the last day they were still children. "So, can you?" Bailey was waiting for her outside the school gates. Avril had gone to Sophie's. All the girls had gone, but Lydia had pretended she needed to talk with Mr. Singh about something, so she told her to go on ahead with Erin and Sophie and she'd catch up. "Can I what?" Lydia asked. "Can you come over to mine?" Bailey was alone. She was still wearing those goddamn ankle socks. From the expression on her face, she had been thinking of nothing except for this question since she'd asked it this morning. Did she even know about Sophie's party? No, she couldn't. She had a round face with freckles, light blue eyes, and a crooked fringe, and in the inflection of her voice and the wrinkle in her forehead, Lydia could see every inch of her loneliness. Imagine being so eager for a friend that you had to wait by the school gates just to have someone to talk to. Imagine if being a puppy dog was preferable to being alone. Lydia had never been alone. Not since she'd met Avril at these same gates going in. Since then, she'd never had to be afraid of being alone. Until now. "Fine," she said to Bailey. "I'll come over for a while. I just have to text my mum." Bailey nearly sagged with relief, though she had the good sense not to show it for more than a split second. "OK, that's cool. Let's go." Lydia texted her mum as they walked, and Bailey got out her phone too and made as if she were checking it for messages, but there obviously wasn't anything there, so she put it back. Lydia considered texting Avril, but she couldn't think of anything natural to say, anything normal. Anyway, Avril wasn't likely to miss her if Harry was there. "My mum will be at work," Bailey told her. "She works in IT, and my dad is an engineer. What about your mum and dad?" "My mum doesn't work and my dad is dead." "Oh," said Bailey. "He died 10 years ago." "Oh, OK," said Bailey, clearly relieved. "What did he do before that?" "He was a lecturer in physics at the university." "We used to live in Southampton," said Bailey, "before we moved here. My mum never minds if I have friends over. I used to have lots of friends over every day when I lived in Southampton." "Uh-huh." "And we used to have pizza parties and sleepovers and stuff. I was really sorry to leave all my friends behind in Southampton, but we still stay in touch." Lydia nodded. Bailey, emboldened, continued. "I used to have this one friend, Susanna. You would have loved her. She was really sporty and clever and fun. We used to go shopping together, just hanging out and meeting other friends for the whole day, on a Saturday. And we used to go to concerts and stuff. Lydia glanced at her from the corner of her eye. Did this Susanna actually exist? And if she did, was she really Bailey's friend, or just someone that Bailey wished were her friend? "What kind of concerts?" she asked. "Oh, you know, everything. Susanna's dad played in a band, so he knows lots of musicians, and we used to go to these local gigs for free. We were going to maybe go to Reading Festival together this summer, but then we had to move. We might still go, though." "Uh-huh. Maybe you could come if you wanted." "Maybe." "You would like Susanna. I think you would be friends. And I had other friends, too. There was this one girl. Erin really reminds me of her. Do you think that Erin would think it was funny that I knew this girl in Southampton who was a lot like her?" "How was she like her?" "You know, she was pretty like her. And popular. Always laughing, you know. Here's my house. It's this one here. It's really close to school, which is handy. That's why my mum and dad chose this one, though we looked at loads of them." Bailey's house was a semi-detached brick cube with diamond-paned windows, older than Lydia's and smaller, with a neatly trimmed lawn for a front garden and several inoffensive hedges near the white PVC front door. There were no cars parked in the drive, and nothing to distinguish it from the other houses on Tennyson Road. Bailey took a key out of her satchel and unlocked the door. "Want a Coke?" Lydia followed her through to the kitchen. Breakfast dishes were still in the sink, and the refrigerator sported a large collection of novelty magnets in the shapes of pigs. "Wow, someone likes pigs," commented Lydia. "Oh, I know, it's my mum. She's crazy about them. She has pigs on everything. It's pretty sad, actually. Want to come up to my room?" "OK." There were framed cartoons of pigs on the staircase wall. Near the top there was a large one, of 3 pigs, 2 large and 1 smaller. The caption read, "3 little pigs, Alan, Charlotte, Bailey." Lydia didn't see any particular resemblance to Bailey in the littlest pig, but she thought about Bailey posing for this picture with her mum and dad, all the time knowing that she was going to be drawn as a pig, not as herself, and she felt a wave of pity for Bailey, stronger than anything she'd felt so far. "We can listen to music if you want," said Bailey, pushing open the door to her bedroom with her elbow because she was holding cans of Coke in her hands. "What do you like?" "What do you have?" "Oh, I can just find anything on Spotify." She put the Cokes on the bedside table and opened up her laptop, which was on her bed. The duvet cover had pink polka dots, like a little girl's. There was a matching shade on the bedside lamp and a pink fluffy rug on the floor, a collection of cheap makeup in front of the mirror. The walls were magnolia, and there was only one poster on the wall of 5 Seconds of Summer. It was pristine. "You like 5 Seconds of Summer?" Lydia asked. She felt Bailey gauging her quickly before the other girl replied. "Oh, I used to. That's an old poster. I'm so over boy bands, you know." "Fair enough." "Susanna used to love them. She bought me that poster." "Why don't we listen to one of the bands you've seen at one of those gigs in Southampton? Did you buy the CDs?" "Oh, yeah, but the CD player on this is broken. I'll just go on Spotify. What do you like?" "I like 60s and 70s stuff mostly. The Rolling Stones, the Kinks, Aretha Franklin." "Really?" There was a slight note of scorn in Bailey's voice. "Nothing new?" "My dad was crazy about all of that music, and I still have all his CDs. I listened to them a lot, so it just became my favourite." Bailey shrugged. "OK, that's cool. I'll make a list." She cracked open her Coke and sat on her bed, fiddling with her laptop. "Athena who?" "Aretha. Aretha Franklin." There was nowhere else to sit, so Lydia opened her own Coke and sat next to her. She looked around the room. There weren't any CDs. Or books. Or clothes littering the floor. There was nothing to show anything of Bailey's personality except for the little girl pink things, and the one poster that you could buy off any website. Nothing different from any other teenage bedroom anywhere else in the world. She wondered where Bailey's stuff was, if it was crammed into the wardrobe or hidden underneath the bed in case someone actually came round. She wondered if Bailey had planned to invite her since this morning, and she prepared her room especially. There was nothing here. Nobody. The pigs lining the rest of the house were weird, but they were at least something. This room reflected no personality whatsoever. She sipped her Coke and watched Bailey's profile as she chose songs online from the list that Lydia had given her. She saw all the hours that Bailey must spend in this room alone, experimenting with that makeup, maybe surfing the net to keep up with people she used to know in Southampton, if they even existed. She was lonely, and working so hard to hide. What? "Those boys teasing you," she said suddenly, though she hadn't planned to talk about it. "You shouldn't let it show that it bothers you. If they don't get a rise out of you, they'll stop." "Oh, I know," said Bailey, not looking up from her laptop, but colouring. "Basically, you just have to give them nothing to talk about," Lydia continued. "Either that or just not give a shit at all." "I don't give a shit." "You do," Lydia thought. "You give an enormous, colossal shit. And that's exactly what makes you their target." It made Lydia feel sad. "There," said Bailey, and the laptop started to play I Can't Get No Satisfaction. She put it on the bedside table, under the lamp, and settled back on the bed next to Lydia, their backs against the wall. Their shoulders just touched. Lydia looked down at their legs, hers slim and tanned, Bailey's pale and shapeless, with those crumpled white socks. "You know," she said, "your legs would look even longer if you folded down your socks. Or didn't wear any." "Do you think so?" "Definitely. And if you found black ones, they'd be even better. See what I do with mine? I fold them down over my heels so they don't show." Lydia toed off her shoe and showed Bailey. "Maybe I could try that. Yeah. And Avril showed me this thing you can do with eyeliner, so it doesn't even look like you're wearing it, but it can really make your eyes look bigger. I can show you if you want." "Yeah, okay." Bailey sounded quite pleased. She took off her own shoes and tried folding her socks over her heel like Lydia did. Lydia wasn't so foolish as to think that socks alone were going to make much of a difference to Bailey's life, but maybe if she felt more confident, if she looked like less of a victim, she would be able to resist the name-calling better. She might be able to make some of her own friends instead of having to tag along with Lydia. Or maybe she could just relax and be herself. "I don't think my legs are ever going to look as long as yours," said Bailey. "Well, that's because I run." "Ooh, I could never run." "Well, it's not so hard, really. And after the first couple of times, it's fun. You just put on music and zone out. The girls on the cross-country team are pretty nice. You'd probably like some of them. It's an easy way to make friends." I'm not sure I could do it." "You can come running with me sometime. I'll help you." And that would not be fun, but who knew? Maybe Bailey would take to it, and she might join the team next year and make some friends. "Maybe you'll need Bailey as much as she needs you," said a little voice in Lydia's head. "If Avril keeps going out with Harry." "Is Erin on the team?" asked Bailey. "Erin? God, no. She doesn't like being seen when she's sweaty." "I wonder if I should mention to Erin that I know this girl who is just like her, in Southampton." "Maybe," said Lydia doubtfully. "Could she be mean sometimes, like Erin?" Bailey looked at her in confusion. "I thought Erin was your friend." "Yeah, ignore me. Do you want to try the eyeliner thing?" Bailey nodded and got up to fetch her makeup. I Say a Little Prayer came on as she sat on the bed, cross-legged, facing Lydia. "This isn't bad. Sort of retro." "Yeah, it's one of my favourite songs." It was the song she played when she thought of Avril. Sometimes on her iPod, over and over and over again, as if playing it and listening to it were a prayer of its own. Avril and Harry snogging in the bushes behind the geography block. She swallowed hard. "Anyway, close your eyes," she said, picking out an eyeliner. Bailey tilted her head up so that Lydia could work on her. Lydia was slightly taller. Bailey wasn't that bad looking. Her face was round, but her skin was good, smooth with hardly any spots. The paleness that looked pasty on her legs was more delicate on her face. Blue veins traced faint lines under her eyes. She had some freckles on her nose, and her eyelashes made fans on her cheeks. Her lips were plump, slightly open as Lydia stroked the eyeliner on her eyelids. Lydia put her left hand on the side of Bailey's face to steady it. She'd done this same thing with Avril, her heart pounding so hard she could barely draw the eyeliner on. She'd allowed her thumb to briefly caress her cheekbone. Avril hadn't seemed to notice, but Lydia had wondered if she'd liked it. She did the same thing with Bailey, feeling how soft her skin was. And then she felt silly. "OK, open your eyes and look up now, I'll do the bottom." Bailey opened her eyes, and she met Lydia's gaze for a second before she looked up. Her irises were pale blue, and her breath feathered on Lydia's wrist as she drew a fine line. Lydia was suddenly conscious of the pulse beating in Bailey's throat above her school shirt, how their knees were brushing each other as they sat close together on the bed. "I know what it's like to feel that you don't belong," Lydia said, keeping her voice conversational. "I feel that sometimes too." Bailey was still looking up at the ceiling. "But you'll find someone who understands you," said Lydia. "You have to. There has to be someone. It would be too unfair if there wasn't." She'd finished drawing on Bailey's eyelids. She hadn't done a great job, to be honest. But Bailey was still staring up at the ceiling. "I don't know who it is," whispered Bailey. Her bottom lip wobbled. Lydia dipped her head and kissed her on the mouth. She was thinking of Avril, of sitting beside Avril as Avril cried, of sharing a bed with Avril as Avril slept, of the weekend at the seaside when she and Avril had sat side by side on the beach at night and made different wishes on the same shooting star. Thinking of Avril, kissing Bailey, her heart hammering and tears burning in her closed eyes. Bailey's lips were slightly sticky. They were plump, softer than the lips of the boys that Lydia had kissed because she was pretending. Her skin was entirely smooth. Her breath tasted of coke. She was the first girl that Lydia had ever kissed, her first real kiss, with someone she didn't even love, thinking of the person she did. Oh, God, a mistake. Her eyes snapped open and she drew away, quickly, to the end of the bed. Bailey was staring at her, wide-eyed, her mouth open. "I'm sorry," said Lydia. "That was a stupid thing to do." "I don't," said Bailey. I'm sorry, I don't know what I was thinking about." A tear rolled down her cheek. She wiped it away, hoping that Bailey hadn't seen it. "Is that why?" said Bailey. "Did you think that what they said was—" "No, of course not. It was a joke. But a stupid one. Anyway, I've got to go." Lydia scrambled off the bed and grabbed her phone, nearly tipping her can of Coke over Bailey's laptop. But she caught it in time. "Whoa, close call," she said cheerfully, in a voice that sounded just like her mother's to her ears. She shoved her shoes on her feet, feeling Bailey staring at her, feeling her lips still warm. "OK, well, see you around." She fled down the stairs, past the cartoon pigs, and out of the house. She ran down the street, ran in her school shoes as fast as she could, with her hair whipping around her face and her bag bumping on her backside, ran until she was out of breath and rounding the corner of Shakespeare Drive into Keats Way. And only then did she realise that she hadn't told Bailey not to tell anyone what she'd done. Chapter 28. Honour. Emma Bovary, arsenic. Anna Karenina, train. Maggie Tulliver, river. Lucy Westenra, steak. Tess d'Urberville, noose. Porphyria, her own hair, Desdemona, pillow, Clytemnestra, sun. Fictional fallen women, a long line of them, all the way back to Eve and her apple. For most of her life, Honor had learned about the world through reading. And in most of her reading from a very early age, she had learned that if you were a woman and you desired, you died. And yet, when she'd been a fallen woman herself, desiring Paul, snatching stolen moments with him, she had never felt so alive. For 3 years, she had been so happy she had glowed. Strangers had commented on it. She tripped lightly through life, the right words appearing on her lips, her body finally understanding why it was made. Her intellect had never been so sharp, her research never so instinctive. She had never felt she was doing wrong, never even thought of his obligations or her sins, until that evening when she visited his house and met his family. Jo, with her secret liaisons with who-knew-what man, was less than subtle. She giggled over text messages and glided around the house, singing. She had a spring in her step, a sway in her hips. She whistled, picking up her children, changing nappies, scrubbing the surfaces, folding laundry. Honor could not see her clearly, but she could see the glow. She could almost feel it emanating from Jo's skin. Because the truth was this. Despite Honor's reading, despite what men and a few chosen women had written for hundreds, even thousands of years, for a fallen woman, the right kind of falling was not torture. It was the best part of life. And for most fallen women, the punishment wasn't death. It was living long after the falling was over. They only read one Christmas card at a time. Sometimes she had Lydia read the letters twice through. And then after she was gone, Honor pored over them again, the words jumping but familiar enough, memorised. Last night Lydia had read her this. I think about how precious my time with my children has been, and I know that if your mother had told me of your existence, I would not have had the same time with my 3 girls. I would not have been able to play with them every day, or seen every small change as they grew. But I would have had time with you. How can you choose between children? You're all grown now, and it's too late. But I can't blame your mother. She must have known that she could be enough for you. Lydia put down the letter. He forgave you. Honor reached out her hand for the letter, as if she could absorb the words by touching them. I have yet to forgive myself, she said. Are you certain you don't mind looking after them again, Honor? Jo paused in the doorway. She was nearly on tiptoe from the force of the desire driving her out of the house. The physical therapist told me to stay active, said Honor. It's either this or go out and join a netball team. Jo made a sound that was half a laugh, as if she couldn't tell whether Honor was making a joke or not. Well, if you're sure. It's a lovely day. There's a chair out in the garden if you want to take them out there. Stop fussing. Go. And there are snacks in the fridge. Some yoghurt. Oscar likes the kind with no bits in, and Iris likes the kind with bits in. And some cheese strings. And it is looking after children, said Honor. Not rocket science. Well, to be honest, sometimes I think looking after children is harder than rocket science. At least in rocket science you get to sit in a quiet room. I can manage. Go. I'll have my phone, said Jo, and gave her children a last kiss before she left them, as if she were leaving for a week, rather than a snatched hour or 2 with her lover. To her surprise, Honor felt Jo swoop down and plant a kiss on her own cheek, too. Thank you, she said, squeezing Honor's hand. And then she was gone. Honor paused, taking this in. Had Jo ever kissed her before? Perhaps once in the early days, when she and Stephen were young and fresh in love. or out of duty on their wedding day. A little hand tugged at her sleeve.
"What are we going to do, Ganny H?"
demanded Oscar.
"Honor," she told him. "My name is Honor." "OK, Ganny H, can we play Angry Birds?"
Iris crowded up against her legs, too. Children had no sense of personal space. Their little bodies were warm against her, and they smelled of milk and biscuits.
"Your mother said we shouldn't spend all our time playing video games."
But what did one do with children? How did one occupy them?
"Why don't you play with your toys for a few minutes, and we'll work out what to do?" "No," said Iris,
but both of them wandered off. Working in tandem, they pulled their toy box open and began excavating items. It had been over 40 years since Honor had been in charge of a very young child. Despite what she'd said to Joe, she had little idea of what it entailed. What she remembered best about her own early motherhood was that it had been hugely, overwhelmingly, despair-inducingly boring. She had loved Stephen desperately from the moment he was born, and yet nothing in her life had prepared her for the tedium of feeds, cleans, burps, walks, sleeps. The lack of any time to herself, hardly any time to think. She was aching for Paul, even more so because Stephen looked just like him, right from the first. She wondered every minute whether she'd done the right thing in not telling Paul. She mourned the person she'd lost, even as she was caring for the person she'd gained. And she couldn't work, of course. There were no lectureships available in London when she'd returned, and she couldn't bear the thought of writing to Paul to ask for a reference anyway. She'd decided to take a career break whilst she looked after Stephen. But the work had been her life, and without it she felt invisible, lost. Her father was a revelation. Shimon Levinson changed nappies, prepared feeds, went for walks with the pram round and round Clissold Park. When Stephen could walk, he used to lead Shimon around by the hand. Her father brought his grandson to shul, even though Honor protested that she was not bringing up her child in any superstitious religion. No, not even reform. And then her father had his second heart attack, and she lost him, too. When she'd thought about it since, she believed that she might have had a touch of postpartum depression, though it wasn't the sort of thing that was talked about then. Mostly it was the boredom, and the dark, dragging time before dawn, and the days, with hours and hours to fill with nothing. Waking up and thinking, "Oh, God, what shall I do all day?" The other mothers in the park were so young, so married. She began to work when he was napping, once he was a toddler and settled into a routine. She began researching, reading, planning articles to write so she could build up her publishing history for when she was able to apply for a lecturing post again. In her head, she would translate from Russian into English as they walked, as Stephen exclaimed over a bug or slipped pebbles into his pocket. She remembered every moment, it seemed, of his life when he was older. But from those first 3 years, she remembered very little. Sunshine in Stephen's hair, the rattle of pebbles in his pocket. She must have spent hours and hours with Stephen. She knew she had. Honor frowned and pressed herself to remember more. Came up with the damp corner of a blanket that Stephen had sucked. The scent of sterilised glass bottles. The imprint of a hand on her cheek as she rocked him to sleep. Hardly enough for 3 years. She remembered better the corridors she went to in her own mind to avoid thinking about Paul, to avoid acknowledging to herself that motherhood was boring, that she was drowning in everyday tasks and lack of sleep and no conversations except for the concrete. To avoid thinking of the nights when she dreamed of that moment at the top of the staircase, looking downwards and seeing Paul standing there. To stop questioning herself about whether she was doing the right thing in not telling him. When Stephen was 3, she had taken up a part-time lectureship at University College London. Her colleagues stayed late, went to conferences, travelled for research, spent years on publications. She was passed up for promotion again and again, not because of her intellect or her academic rigour, but because her work had to fit around school hours and childminders. She was able to dedicate more hours to her work as Stephen grew, but she had lost ground. She never fulfilled the brilliant promise of her Oxford days, and never had enough time to spend with her son either. Oscar and Iris were doing something complicated with wooden bricks, something that required Oscar to give his sister orders, and for her to scurry back and forth with more and more bricks, fetching and carrying and dropping. Had she got down on the floor and played with Stephen, as Jo did with her children? Perhaps she had sometimes and didn't remember it now. She hadn't. She had read with him, and talked with him, and when he was older they'd gone on long walks together, to galleries, to libraries, through the cemeteries to learn names and dates. Why hadn't she played? A crash and a cry of dismay from Iris, and Honor hauled herself to her feet. Bricks littered the floor in every direction. If they stayed in much longer, the house was going to be a health hazard. "We are going to the park," she announced. "No," said Iris, jumping up and down and throwing a brick into the air with delight. It clattered to the floor, uncaught. "Yes," Honor told her, and the little girl laughed. "Will you push me on the swings?" Oscar asked. "Unless it kills me." She considered the large bag that Jo took with her on all excursions with the children, and decided against it. "Can you live with a dirty nappy for an hour, Iris?" "No." No, the only power given to wilful toddlers and cantankerous old women. "I can change nappies," said Oscar. Honor thought this was highly unlikely, but she nodded anyway. "Then you will be in charge of nappies, and I will be in charge of snacks." "Ice cream," said Iris hopefully. "Ice cream it is." "I will bring all of my trucks," declared Oscar, and he started off to get them. Honor stopped him with a hand on his tiny shoulder. "Think this through," she told him. "You are small, and your sister is smaller. Your truck-carrying capability is not as large as you may think. Meanwhile, I am elderly." "What's elderly?" "Old. I'm old. And unable to carry every one of the dozens of trucks that you possess." "Not if we take your purple scooter," suggested Oscar slyly. She put out her hand to touch the top of his head. He was very short, sturdy, with his mother's gingery hair and his father's husky voice. He wasn't related to Honor at all, which was perhaps why she had no impulse to correct him. What she did with him and said to him was unlikely to matter. She would probably be gone by the time he was of an age to remember her. "You," she said with new respect, "will go far in life. I will go to the park." "No!" yelled Iris. She jumped up and down and shook her head, her dark curls bouncing. "No! No! No!" "No may seem like a rational and attractive proposition when you are 2, Honor said to her, "but when you get to my age, you will realise that you have to take the opportunities that life throws at you, before it is too late. Perhaps even after it is too late." She clapped her hands together, and for the first time in a long time she felt something small tickling inside her chest. Something a bit like anticipation. "Shall we fire up the scooter?" Oscar led them straight to it, marching across the garage like a little soldier on a mission. He put the large fire engine that he was carrying into the basket at the front of the scooter. "Can I drive?" She found the button to open the garage door and then turned to Iris, who was chewing on her sun hat. "Can you get on the back of the scooter? And when I sit down, you will have to hold on to me." "No," said Iris, nodding, and clambered onto the seat.
Can I drive? Oscar asked again. No, said Honor. But you can do something better. Do you have sharp eyes, Oscar? I have really sharp eyes. I can see everything. Good. That's exactly what I need. She stooped down as far as she could, lowering her voice confidentially. I need you to stand in front of me on the scooter with your hands on the handlebars. And you need to keep a sharp eye out for things in front of us. Things we might crash into. Can you do that? Yeah! Well done. She climbed onto the seat, reaching her arms either side of Oscar, perching on the edge of the seat to leave room for Iris. She found the starter switch by feel and started the electric motor. The children squealed in excitement. Can we go fast? Asked Oscar. Fortunately, we cannot. She positioned her hand on the throttle, ready to go. Now, hold on tight, children. No! Cried Iris into her ear. The scooter jerked forward. She steered towards the light. Now, do we go left or right to get to the park? Left! No, right! Something occurred to her, and she slowed the scooter to a crawl. Do you know the difference between left and right, Oscar? She stopped the scooter. After a moment's thought, she unbuckled her watch from her wrist and put it on Oscar's left wrist. So if we need to steer in the direction of the watch arm, you say watch. And if we need to steer the other way, you say no watch. Very good. So which way is the park? Oscar considered. No watch way. Right it is. Tell me when we've reached the pavement, Oscar. His hair tickled her chin as he nodded. She started up the scooter again and proceeded forward at a crawl, listening to the gravel under the wheels, until Oscar announced, Now! She steered right, and the scooter ran smoothly off the drive onto the pavement. Now, Oscar, it's your job to tell me if we're going to bump into anything. All right. I'm very good at this, said Oscar. I'm certain that you are. The park was less than a quarter of a mile away, and entailed crossing 2 roads. Oscar guided her to the dipped curbs, using his watch hand, and together they checked for traffic, Honor hushing the children so that she could listen. At the second crossing, Iris started bouncing on the seat and yelling, Park! You must be quiet and calm, so that your brother and I can concentrate, Honor told her, and Iris immediately subsided. Can you see any cars coming, Oscar? Look carefully. No cars, Gunny H. No cars, agreed Iris. Honor thumbed the throttle, and they rolled off the curb. Park! Sang Iris in her ear, and Honor saw movement to their right. Belatedly, she heard the car coming, a low hum of engine, hardly louder than the scooter's electric whine. Where was the brake? How did she stop? She yanked her hand from the throttle, and the scooter jerked to a halt. Iris banged against her back. Ow! Yelled Oscar. She heard the car pass in front of them. It was close enough so that she could feel the breeze it created and smell its warm tyres. I think, she began, and realised that she had no breath to speak with. She waited until she could breathe again and said, I think this may be more dangerous than I anticipated. I'm okay, Oscar told her. I just bumped my arm. Can I press the button to make it go? No, said Honor. Her hands were shaking slightly as she started up the scooter again. She listened carefully and turned her head to either side several times before she crossed the road and rolled onto the pavement leading to the park. Slowly, steadily, the scooter's engine labouring against the slight incline, they made their way to the play area. Both the children jumped off the scooter. Honor's heart was still hammering. Her palms were damp. I help you, said Iris, and Honor felt a little hand creep inside hers. She let Iris assist her getting off the scooter. Oscar held the gate open for them,
And then the two children were off, running and shouting to each other, into the grey area where she couldn't see. "Stay inside the play park," she called to them, and followed the fence along counterclockwise until she found a green painted bench to sit on. She could hear the children talking to each other. As always, she caught the park in snatches. There was some sort of rubberized matting on the ground, presumably to make children bounce when they fell. A tracery of lines and shadow was a climbing frame. A sense of pendulum movement was the swings. She tipped her head up and felt the sunshine on her forehead and cheeks, letting it calm her. Little footfalls and chatter and laughter. They had made it safely, and they would make it back. She would be careful, but perhaps after this they should stay in the garden. She laughed aloud, surprising herself. Who would have thought, at her age, that she would be embarking upon adventures? Or that those adventures would be so small and yet so important. Someone sat beside her, and she heard a conversation between two mothers about their holidays, the renovations that Mother Number 1 was doing to her house, the car that Mother Number 2 was planning to buy. This was closely followed by what both of them were planning to cook for tea tonight, and a detailed exploration of what each of their toddlers would and would not eat. Allegedly, Liam would not eat any food that was not white, whilst Ella would not touch anything that could not be spread with Nutella, because it rhymed with her name. If this was the level of discourse that Jo had to tolerate on a daily basis, it was no wonder she was carrying on an affair. "Ice cream, Granny H," said Iris's voice suddenly close beside her. "Can you take me to the ice cream van?" she asked, and was answered by Iris clasping her hand again and tugging. She stood, and her other hand was seized by Oscar. She let them lead her, like a child, to the ice cream van, where she bought 3 large 99s with flakes, selecting the coins by feel. Then she let them lead her to another bench. The children sat on either side of her, their legs pressed against hers, their elbows bumping hers as they all ate their cornets together. She had rarely tasted anything so delicious. Chapter 29. Lydia. It was strange having this weight of stuff to do, all the revision for the exams that would determine the rest of her life, but nothing to do right this very moment. Nothing to do but think. Lydia coloured in her revision timetable with the highlighters that Mum had bought for her, took a shower, styled her hair. She rearranged her collection of Averil's cranes that sat perched on the shelf over her desk. She'd lost 1 or 2 in the move upstairs, but there were still a lot of them. All different colours and sizes. Their wings trembled as she moved them. Delicate and beautiful. She felt like she'd betrayed their friendship by kissing Bailey. How crazy was that? This room was so quiet. You couldn't hear anything that was going on downstairs, nothing at all. All the noise used to annoy her, but now she missed it. She felt cut off from everything. "I just want to be normal," Avril had said. "Is that so wrong?" "Promise to always tell me the truth." Lydia sighed and reached for her running clothes, but then she thought twice about it and went downstairs to Granny H's room. "Come in," said Granny H to her knock. But when she entered, her grandmother was lying on her bed, fully dressed, her eyes closed. "Are you taking a nap?" Granny H didn't open her eyes. "No, merely revisiting some memories." "Where's Mum?" "She is outside with her friend Sarah and the children." "Oh. I was just taking a break from my revision, and I wondered if you wanted to read another letter?" "We only have one left." "We can read it later, there's no hurry." But Lydia wanted to read it now. Avril hadn't answered her texts. She was losing her. She wanted some connection, something to feel that she belonged, that she was necessary in some way. even if it was reading letters from a man she'd never met to a grandmother whose life was largely a mystery.
They're in the desk.
Lydia found them in the top drawer.
End of CD 7. CD 8.
If it had been her, she would have opened them all up at once and read them. But Granny H seemed to want to eke them out. She supposed that if that was all you had of someone you loved, you had to make them last, like a collection of paper cranes. She took out the last unopened one and drew a chair close to the bed before she opened it. "It's another Robin card," she said. "In fact, I think it's the same Robin card as he used the year before. Maybe he had a lot left over. Don't you want to look?"
I can imagine it. Please read it to me.
Lydia opened the card. It was dated 2 years ago, and she wondered again why Paul Honeywell, her grandfather, though it was hard to think of him that way, had stopped writing. Had he died? Or had the letters just stopped being forwarded? Or had he got so tired of writing without a reply, so tired of trying and trying, that he'd given up? She thought of the paper cranes again, and she had to clear her throat before she began reading the letter aloud. "Dear Stephen, do you receive these letters, I wonder? Year after year I write them, and I picture you throwing them straight in the bin. I suppose I'm writing them for myself rather than for you, perhaps to assuage my guilt at never knowing you. Even choosing to write them in Christmas cards is selfish, because my family would never notice them in the outflux of post. But you're Jewish by birth and might not even celebrate Christmas. All of these letters might be nothing more than an unpleasant reminder for you of a person you never knew. Forgive me. Even though I may write these letters out of selfishness, I've tried not to be self-indulgent in them. But this has been a difficult year. Wendy died in the spring. Cancer. She was a good woman, Stephen. I didn't deserve her, and I tried to be the best husband I could to her, which meant that I was no kind of father to you. In all our years together, I was only unfaithful to Wendy once, in either thought or deed, and that was during those years when I was with your mother. Every day I was with Honor, I wished that I'd met her first, before Wendy. In some ways I still wish it, though I was never brave enough to act upon it. I loved your mother more than life. I loved her more than any person except for my children. She was sharp and vibrant, in full colour compared to everyone else, and when I looked at her, I saw the other half of myself. Lydia's voice stopped in her throat. On the bed, Granny H did not move. Lydia would have thought she had fallen asleep, except there was a fierceness about her, despite the fact that she lay on her back, eyes closed. I was the weak one in that relationship, and I was the weak one in my marriage too. All of my love seems to be laden with guilt. And now I really am being self-indulgent. I refuse to feel guilty about your existence, Stephen Levinson, or for the fact that I write to you, without any hope of return. You are one of my children, and I love you for that. And I love you for your mother's sake. Your father, Paul Honeywell. Granny H drew in a long breath and let it out. Lydia folded the letter. The dark writing seemed too much to look at, too naked on the white of the card. They sat, for some time, in silence, except for the sounds of Mum and Sarah and the children in the garden.
So,
said Granny H at last.
Yes.
Slowly, she sat up on the bed. Her eyes, now open, stared straight ahead, and seemed to be seeing someone other than Lydia, someone whom she loved, and who loved her in return. So much so that they had spent nearly 3 of Lydia's lifetimes apart, thinking of each other. "I'm gay." Lydia blurted it out, without knowing she was going to. Granny H blinked. She turned her head and looked Lydia up and down in that odd, sideways manner she had about her these days. "I'm gay," Lydia said again. "I like girls, not boys." "I know what gay means," said Granny H, but she said it gently. "Have you known for some time, or is this a new discovery?" "I've always known, I think. Don't tell Mum." Granny H frowned. "Why not?" "You don't think she would be so foolish as to disapprove, do you?" "No, not exactly. I mean, not at all. But she'd say, I know what she'd say. She'd tell me that everything is all right and it's all going to be fine. That one day I'll look back on my feelings and wonder why I was so confused and hurt, and it will all have just been a blip on my way to future happiness." "I think that is exactly what she would say. And yet it's not what you want to hear." "No. Because I don't want to have felt all of this for nothing. I don't want it to be a blip, part of the happy story that Mum makes up about the world. It's real." She sounded hoarse and frantic to her own ears. Granny H held out her hand, and Lydia went to her, sat beside her, let her hold both her hands in her papery, dry, soft palms. "It is real," agreed Granny H. "And it is not a happy story, not all the time. But there are compensations." Granny H held her hands, and they both listened to Osk and Iry playing outside. A high peal of giggling and the thunk of a ball against the side of the house. It sounded like another world. "If his wife has died, you could see him again," said Lydia. "You mean that his wife was my blip?" Honor's voice was dryly humorous. "You are more like your mother than you admit." Lydia blushed. "Sorry, I just—" "You want a happy ending. But even though we read the stories, we are realists, you and I." Chapter 30. Joe. She couldn't believe his body. No, she could believe his body. Only just. What she couldn't believe was that she was here in bed with him. Not for the first time, or even the second. Side by side on their backs, on the bare sheet with the duvet pushed off onto the floor. They had been so eager that Marcus still had his socks on. He pulled her over so that her head rested on his chest, and she laid her hand on his flat stomach. His heart was still beating hard. She knew, even from her brief experience, that he would be ready to go again within half an hour. Even sooner if she pushed the matter. "Why are you smiling?" he asked her. She raised her head. "You couldn't see me smiling." "I felt it." He stroked her hair back from her face. "You're laughing at my socks, aren't you?" "I was just thinking that the last time I slept with a man in his 20s, I was in my 20s myself. I'm 30 next month. I think I want to eat cake in the rain." "And then you can sleep with a man in his 30s. He smiled at her, then sobered. "Was it Lydia's father?" Joe nodded. "Stephen." "How did he die?" "You don't have to tell me," he added quickly. "I don't mind." "He died saving someone else's life." His hand had been idly playing with her hair, but it stilled. "That's amazing." "Stephen was like that." "Lydia knows." "Yes, of course. We're very proud of him, while at the same time missing him like crazy." "And your second husband?"
was an arsehole. Actually, I don't think I've said that aloud before. He's remarrying in July. Yikes. She smiled at Marcus. She liked the yikes. She liked that he asked about her husband's. She liked the way his hair curled on his forehead and the laughter lines in his otherwise unlined face. She liked him altogether more than was appropriate. "And you?" she asked. "Why haven't you found a nice girl and settled down yet?" He shrugged. I was serious about one girl. She wasn't so serious about me. "Where is she now?" "Tasmania." Yikes. Indeed. He kissed her on the lips. "My love life history is embarrassingly brief." "Give it time." "I'm learning something new every day." He kissed her longer, but Jo had to know, so she pulled away. "What happened with the girl in Tasmania? If you liked her so much." "She wanted adventure. I wanted to stay at home and teach. I'm too nice for her," she said. "Too boring." He said it lightly, but Jo could see the pain, that he was hearing the girl's voice when he said the words. She knew they were the exact same words that his girlfriend had said when she'd left. "I can't imagine you as too boring for anyone," she said. "That's what's miraculous about you, Jo. When I'm with you, I don't feel boring at all." "You're not. You're young and clever and ridiculously sexy. And I've got a mortgage and a job and I mow the lawn every Sunday. And carry on an affair with your neighbour." He laughed. His face was so sunny when he laughed. "My friend Sarah and her husband have been going through a bit of a dry spell," Jo told him. "I told her that maybe she should send him some sexy texts, spice things up a bit." "Did it work?" "He came home and demanded to know who she was having an affair with. He thought she'd sent them to him by mistake. But they had good make-up sex, so I suppose it did work." "You've told Sarah about us, then?" No." And because he seemed to be expecting an explanation, she added, "Not yet." He was watching her. She rolled onto her back to avoid his scrutiny and caught a glimpse of the bedroom wall. She'd been too preoccupied to notice before, but he'd hung up his photographs of glaciers. 6 of them, across the wall of his bedroom. They were windows to other worlds. "Oh, you hung them up?" "It took all morning to get them straight." "They're beautiful." "You're beautiful." He drew her closer against his naked body and ran his fingertips lazily across her skin. "Tell me something else about you. Not about your husbands or about your friends. About you. What's your secret ambition?" She squirmed. "What's yours?" "Polar explorer. Not going to happen. I'm not rich enough and too attached to my toes. I have to make do with a fortnight on a glacier every year." "You can forget that humanity ever existed. I think that's why I like it so much." "What's your secret ambition? Stop avoiding the question and tell me." "I used to want to go to university and train as a teacher." "You'd be good at it." "You could do that in a year or 2. Once the children are both at nursery, you could do it now, part-time in the evenings, and then you'd be ready to work when Oscar and Iris were in school." "No, it's been too long since I studied." "I probably wouldn't be any good at it. Anyway, I'm always exhausted as soon as the children go to bed." "You don't seem exhausted to me." "Well, I'm sleeping these days," she said, and was immediately surprised that she'd said it. He propped himself on his elbow. "What do you mean, these days?" I often get a bit of insomnia this time of year." "Why this time of year?" "It's the..." She swallowed. "It's the anniversary of Stephen's death, at the beginning of June. I wake up in the night and I think... Oh, this is going to sound really morbid." "You think of what, Jo?" he asked her quietly. "I think of what his last moments were like. Whether he was frightened,
I wasn't there, but I hear him screaming sometimes. His arm tightened around her. It wasn't perfect, our marriage, she said. We had some difficult times. Honor idealises him, and so does Lydia. And that's fine. It's wonderful, actually, that they can do that. But sometimes I feel as if I'm the only one who knows the truth. And I have to keep it together for other people. And for Stephen. Because he wouldn't want us to be sad. Those are the kinds of things I think about late at night when I can't sleep. But you said you were sleeping these days. Yes. She smiled at him. I'm sleeping much better. You're to thank for that. I'm glad. He sat up. Are you hungry? I'm starving. I was on lunch duty and I never managed to eat anything. I have to get home and make the children's tea. I've learned something about you by now, Jo. You've done their tea already. It's just waiting to be warmed up. Yes, but Honor... He tilted up her chin. Ring her. Say you've been delayed. Come out with me for dinner. Dinner? Yeah. You and me with our clothes on, talking to each other. Maybe a glass of wine, like grown-ups. Fancy it? She fancied it so much she could taste it. We can't do that. Why not? Lydia? Your teaching position? Damn it, you remembered. A kiss. We could go out of town. A little country pub. I don't have time. I could make you dinner here. I make a mean spag bowl. I have to get back. But her hand, seemingly by itself, slid down his belly, through the hair at his groin. But you have a little bit of time. A little bit. Her hand went lower. But she glanced at his photographs on the wall. All these places he'd been, this life he had lived, that she could never be part of. He was a stranger still, aside from these stolen hours together. Do you still love her? She couldn't help asking. The serious one, in Tasmania. I care about her. She changed me. It still hurts sometimes. I don't know. Is that love? I think it is. You still love Stephen? Despite the difficult times? Yes, she said. But I don't think about him all the time. Not when we're doing this. His eyes closed briefly as she grasped him. But then they were looking into hers again. What is this that we're doing? He asked. I'd have thought it was self-evident. He caught her wrist and stopped her hand. I don't think it is entirely self-evident. I think you need to say. This from a man 10 years younger than she was, with a body and a recovery time that would put most men to shame. A man who didn't seem to realise his own power and beauty, who was nursing a bit of a broken heart, who was a good listener, who travelled to glaciers so that he could be alone with their vastness. And that smile, far too easy to like. I'm using you for your body, she said. Haven't you noticed? She squeezed and he groaned, so she did it again. Then go ahead and use me, he whispered, tilting his head back and closing his eyes again. Chapter 31. Honour. Handwriting was nearly impossible, so she had borrowed Lydia's laptop to touch type. But the phrases that she had composed in her head felt wrong in her fingers. How could you tell a man that the son he had never known was dead? How could you explain the years of silence, the years of yearning? She had been at it for hours and made no progress. Honor rose and went into the kitchen in search of a cup of tea. She was moving more easily now. The pain was nearly gone, no more than a dull ache in the evenings, and she had dispensed with the cane, though she walked with an habitual shuffle in Joe's house so as to avoid tripping over any toys. She had mapped out this house nearly as well as her own, knew how many steps to the kitchen table, how many steps to the kettle, the reaching distance to the mug cupboard. But the clutter shifted day by day. Iris pattered over to her and hugged her leg. Honor let her hand rest on her silky curls. The kitchen was warm from the oven and smelled of vanilla and butter.
Granny H, you can lick the spoon,
said Oscar, putting something wooden in her hand.
That's all right, Oscar, you can lick it, she said. My spoon-licking days are past. I'm Granny H's helper, announced Oscar, because I have good eyes.
Are you helping Mummy bake a cake? Honor asked quickly.
2 cakes.
Tea, Honor? Joe's voice had a studied lightness to it. Honor nodded and sat at her seat at the kitchen table, letting the family move around her. They were glimpses of colour and shape, noises and scents, vanilla and sugar and jam, the hot mug of tea placed near her hands. Someone knocked on the front door, and it opened straight away.
It's me,
called Joe's friend, Sarah.
Kids are in the car, can't stop. Come on, Oscar and Iris, we're on our way to the farm park to see the deer.
A bustle at the door. Honor liked Sarah, from what she'd noticed so far. She had spirit and dark skin, which made her different from almost everyone else in this neighbourhood.
Bye, Granny H,
cried Oscar, running over and planting a kiss on her cheek. And then they were gone, and it was quiet again. I'm going out as soon as the cakes are done, said Joe, coming back to the kitchen and taking up her mixing bowl. And Lydia's gone to the library to revise today, so you'll have the house to yourself.
Are you going anywhere nice?
Honor didn't expect Joe to tell her about her lover, but she couldn't resist a little probe. It's a friend's birthday.
It must be a very good friend if you're making them 2 cakes.
One is for us. You can't make cake in this household without giving some to Oscar. Honor hesitated, knowing she had no right to ask, then said,
You were awake last night.
Oh, you heard me? I hope I didn't disturb you.
I was awake. You are often up in the middle of the night.
I'm sorry. I try to be as quiet as I can. Joe scraped batter into the tins. Actually, I thought it was getting better. I think I must be worried about today. Honor said nothing. She did not, as a habit, invite confidences from her daughter-in-law. But Joe seemed agitated as she put the cakes into the oven and washed up the bowl and spoons. Honor wondered if she was going to hear the story of Joe's affair, and she rather hoped it would not be tedious. Though it probably lacked illicit thrill if Joe was making him a cake for his birthday. Joe pulled out a chair and joined Honor at the table. Actually, she said, sounding uncertain, you could come with me, if you like.
Come with you?
You may be angry about this. Honor said nothing, remembering her fury cleaning the kitchen. I'm visiting Adam Acarelli, Joe said.
Adam?
Asked Honor, but as soon as she said it, the name clicked into place. You're not talking about Adam. She had not said the name for 10 years. She wasn't sure she'd even said it then. But she could see it in print, behind her eyelids, next to Stephen's.
You visit him?
Only on his birthday. He's often lonely. I like to bring him a cake. The cake was not for her lover. It was for Adam Acarelli. Honor clenched her teeth.
You don't owe that man anything.
No, I don't, but I like to do it. I think Stephen would have liked me to. He's quite a vulnerable young man.
He killed Stephen.
Stephen died because of him. But it wasn't Adam's fault. He didn't mean to.
Outcomes matter, not intentions.
Well, I think intentions matter as well. And it was difficult to see him at first. But then I saw how desperate he was, and how sad. And I thought, what did Stephen die for, if this young man's life is also miserable?
So you go to see him every year to cheer him up? Is that your mission?
I go to see him because it's his birthday, and I think it's good to celebrate life while you've still got it.
You'll forgive me if I don't think that Adam Akerele's life was worth the life of my son.
That's not really the way it works, Honor.
Is this a role that comes easily to you? The saint?
Joe stood. It isn't any kind of a role. My husband is dead, and it helps me feel more peaceful about it.
How does Lydia feel about you visiting this man?
I mentioned it to her once, and she became very angry. The same as you.
With good reason, I think.
Fair enough, I can't argue with you. It's been 10 years, though. It's a long time to hate someone who doesn't deserve it. Joe left the room, and Honor stayed at the table with her cold cup of tea, fuming.
Our son died,
Honor typed.
You never knew him. I never allowed you to know him, and he died to save a stranger. His wife was dry-eyed at his funeral, and she bakes this stranger a cake every year, and I am so angry that he did this instead of choosing to live.
Honor deleted what she'd written. She'd pictured Stephen's death to herself, in dreams and in waking, many times. Sometimes it was a torture, and sometimes a comfort. In her mind, Adam Akerele was hazy, a distorted blank, like the centre of her waking vision. He was a cause, a reason, a mechanism, a curse. In the kitchen, Joe was placing an iced cake into a tin.
"All right,"
Honor said to her.
"All right, I will come with you. But don't expect me to say anything to him. I don't like him. But I'm curious. I want to see what my son lost his life to save."
Joe put on Radio 4 as they drove, which obviated the need for talking, but Honor was too preoccupied to say much anyway. She did not want to find an explanation for her son's death, because that would mean that she had accepted it, and she could not accept, would never accept, that her beautiful, brilliant boy, so full of potential and intelligence and love, could be gone. 10 years. He was not the sort of person whom time erased. Honor's feelings did not tarnish and fade. She loved rarely, but she loved fully and forever. "So you should know about Adam," said Joe, as they drove through the centre of Brickham and out the other side. "I only see him once a year. He doesn't want to see me any more than that. But sometimes he's better than others. He has some mental health issues. I'm not sure what exactly, because he's not comfortable talking about it. But I do know that things can get bad if he's not taking his medication." This is the life that Stephen sacrificed his for. "Last year he'd found a job, so I'm hoping that everything's gone well for him. He's not very good at keeping in touch."
"What do you get out of this visit?"
Honor couldn't help asking. "It isn't for sainthood. The first time I saw him, I wanted some answers. I wanted to know what had happened. And he was able to give me some details, though not quite enough." She was silent for a moment. "I keep going because I feel connected to Adam. In Stephen's last moments, they shared something. He's alive because my husband was a good man, and I like knowing that." Honor frowned.
"I'm not sure I need reminding."
"And also, I like him." Joe signalled left and parked the car outside a block of flats made of yellow brick. "And he enjoys my cake, which is always gratifying." They made slow progress around the tower block to the entrance. There was a wheelchair ramp, and they walked up that. Graffiti spattered the side of the building, the desperate, incoherent communication of those with too much time on their hands. Joe buzzed at the door, and held it open for Honor to come through. The corridor was cramped and had a definite whiff of mildew and urine. On the fourth door along, someone had sellotaped a single green balloon. Honor's fingers brushed it. "Looks like he's having a party," said Jo cheerfully, and she knocked. The door was opened by a woman. Honor took in hooped earrings and part of an elaborate hairstyle. "Hi, I'm Jo, and this is my mother-in-law, Honor Levinson. We've come to wish Adam a happy birthday." "Come in," said the woman, and led them through another narrow corridor into what was presumably the living room. Honor stopped short in the door, assailed by the scent of old paper. A library. She reached out and encountered a stack of paperback books lining the wall. All around her vision she could see books. They appeared to line the walls, floor to ceiling, stacked on top of each other, 3 deep, tottering. If there had been any bookcases, they were long since buried. The room was dim, and there were other scents as well. Cooking oil, coffee, something familiar that niggled at the back of her memory. "Happy birthday, Adam," said Jo, going straight to someone sitting in a chair in the corner. She hugged him and gave him the cake tin. "My favourite again?" he asked her. "Of course." Honor stepped further into the library room and surveyed the details that she could snatch of Adam Akerele. He wore a blue and white football top. His skin was glossy, dark, unlined. Honor stood as straight as she could, defying anyone to offer her a seat. "I'll get some plates," said the young woman who had let them in. "That's my girlfriend, Ellie," Adam told Jo. "We've been seeing each other since October." "That's really fantastic, Adam. I'm so pleased for you."
"She's a good woman. Puts up with me." "How are your little ones?"
"They're great. Both growing like crazy. And Lydia is about to do her GCSEs. We're incredibly proud of her. Adam, this is my mother-in-law, Dr. Honor Levinson. She's Stephen's mother." The young man jumped to his feet.
"Oh, wow. Stephen's mom. Oh, wow. Please, sit down. Sit down here. Ellie will be back with the cake. She'll make tea as well, or would you rather have a coffee?"
"No, thank you." But Adam had grabbed Honor's hand in both of his before she could recoil, and was shaking it as if he could pull it off. His hands were large and warm and slightly damp.
"Mom,"
Adam said.
"This is Stephen's mom. Stephen's."
A seismic move in the corner of the room, and a large woman bore down on her. She was not as tall as Honor, but at least 3 times as broad. Honor caught a glimpse of her hair, straightened like poker irons and sticking out from her round head. She seized Honor and hugged her hard. Honor squeaked as the air was squeezed out of her, pressed up against the woman's massive bosom.
"Thank you so much,"
the woman boomed in her ear.
"Thank you. I cannot thank you enough."
She leaned back, still holding Honor, but looking up into her face. She was an indistinct brown, too close to see. Honor breathed, stunned, smelling wool and Anais perfume. That was the scent she had smelled with the books. The scent she'd recognised. The same scent Stephen had bought her for her birthday when he was, 11? 12? Flowery. Too sweet, too girlish for Honor. She had worn it every day until the bottle was empty.
"Thank you for your son,"
Adam's mother said. The woman was all softness, all enveloping warmth and flowers, a rich, full voice.
"Thank you for giving me mine. My only son. As you are a mother, you will know how I feel."
"Yes," Honor found herself saying. "I think that I do." They sang Happy Birthday, and someone put music on the CD player that nestled in a bower of paperbacks. Adam danced with everyone. Jo, his mother, the social worker who had turned up after they had, even Honor. She, sat in a chair, but he took her hands in his large, moist ones and swayed back and forth, smiling down at her. As far as she was aware, she hadn't met many people with mental illness, and she had no idea whether this was normal for Adam or not. But when he danced with Ellie, awkwardly, knocking books off the piles as they moved so that they pooled like petals at their feet, he seemed happy. Jo clapped along to the music, as if it were the birthday party of one of her own children. When they cut the cake and put it on paper plates, Adam sat beside her, close enough so that she could hear the soft sounds his mouth made when he ate.
"I think of your son every day,"
he told her. She was not able to eat much of the cake. It was too sweet. She was trying to reconcile this corporeal and solid young man with the indistinct person she had always imagined.
"He was clever, wasn't he?"
Adam asked.
"I found out later that he was a scientist."
"A physicist?"
"I could tell he was clever, just from the way he spoke to me."
"How?" Honor swallowed, cloying sweetness. She had thought about Stephen's last words, late at night, alone, and in dreams. But they were unclear, speculation only, as indistinct as her picture of Adam Akerele. More often she had heard his voice raised in anger against her, as it had been during their last argument. Perhaps one set of words could supplant the other. "What did he say to you?" she asked. Adam settled deeper into his chair.
"I was on the bridge, going to jump off. I was waiting for a train, so it would hit me. I wanted to be sure, you know. I really wanted to top myself. And then there was this man in running clothes, climbing over the railing. I thought he wanted to jump too, and I remember thinking, isn't it funny that there are two crazies at the same place at the same time?"
He spoke in the manner of a person who had told this story many times, his party piece, perhaps. No, he would have spoken of it in therapy. And to Jo.
But then he told me not to jump. He asked me my name, and he told me that I shouldn't jump. So I knew he was trying to save me. And then he asked me if I knew what gravity was, what caused it.
Honor had never heard Stephen in a lecture theatre, but she had heard him speak to Lydia when she was small. He was always patient, gentle, never spoke to her as if she were too young for rational thought. She thought that Stephen would have spoken to Adam like this.
So I said, well, sort of, because at the moment I wasn't really thinking about gravity or whatever. I was more interested in when the train was coming. And then he told me this. I'll never forget it. He told me that gravity was the force between two objects, and that everything in the universe, no matter how big or small, had gravity. That everything was pulling on everything else.
Honor closed her eyes. The room had gone quiet around them. Adam's voice was soft, a bit reedy. In her mind it became Stephen's deeper voice, the hint of North London accent he had never quite lost. He had always been so good at explaining.
"Even people,"
said Adam. Said Stephen, in her mind.
"Gravity makes stars burn and worlds turn, but it's in people too. Any two people, close to each other, exert a force on each other commensurate with their distance. The closer they are, the stronger it is."
Honor's mouth formed the words. They came out of her as a whisper. The closer they are, the stronger it is.
"And then," Adam continued, "I heard a siren behind us, and I sort of went to turn around and look, and I lost my balance for a minute. The ledge was pretty narrow, and he reached out to help me. But we weren't that close, not actually close enough to touch. Just close enough to talk. And I didn't even see him slip, I just saw his arm and his face. I did put my hand out to grab him, but I missed. I wasn't quick enough. I remember him looking me in the face, though. It seemed like a really long time, but it couldn't have been a second even. We just looked at each other, like we knew each other, like we understood. Adam shifted. She could hear the chair creak beneath him. And then he fell, Adam said. On the drive back, Honor turned over the book that Adam had pressed upon her before they left. It was entirely familiar, a treasury of English verse, a paperback with a cover soft from handling. "I didn't expect him to be so young," she said. "He's 26. He was 16 when he tried to jump. The same age that Lydia is now." Jo shook her head. "I have a lot of reasons to count my blessings." "I also did not expect—" Honor couldn't work out exactly which word to choose. She did not like Adam, precisely. Her sympathy for him was limited, but she felt something for him, an emotion that had perhaps not yet been named. "I did not know what to expect," she finished. "You were angry," said Jo. "Maybe you're not so angry anymore?" "No, not angry. It is difficult to be angry with someone so—" Again the term eluded her. She meant something like real, but that was not precise enough. "It is difficult to be angry with someone who remembers Stephen's words so well." "The gravity," agreed Jo. "I haven't heard that in a while." "Yes, it's such a Stephen thing to say, isn't it? He used to drop stones and feathers and leaves from the bridge in the park into the pond. He was always doing experiments, even as a child." "I'm glad you came today," said Jo. Honor nodded. She was not glad, but she was thankful. "When I first met Adam, he wasn't in such good shape then. He was actually in hospital because they sectioned him after his suicide attempt. I realised that if Stephen hadn't been there, then Adam would be dead. And I couldn't wish that on anyone." Honor thought about this. It was very probable that Jo was a better person than she was. As sincere as this young man had been, as grateful as his mother was, whatever connection she had felt in that strange, stuffy room lined obsessively with words, Honor knew that if she were given a choice, she would not choose Adam Akerele's life over Stephen Levinson's. But she hadn't been given that choice. She was given this reality. Was it time to learn to accept it? When the hospital rang, Jo said in a very quiet voice, so quiet it could barely be heard over the motor of the car, "And I found out that Stephen had fallen from a bridge. I thought at first that he'd jumped." "You thought that he used to get these depressions, not often and not always, but sometimes. He called them black holes. There were times when he felt that all the joy had been sucked out of his life. And there wasn't anything I could do to help him then. I just had to be there and ride it out with him. Let him know that Lydia and I would be there when he emerged again. He said that running helped, and he was out running that day." Honor did not know what to say. Her Stephen, the person she knew better than any other. She thought back to those long, dark days when he had been a baby. What he might have imbibed with the milk he sucked from her body. "He didn't want to tell you," Jo added.
He didn't want you to worry. And they weren't frequent, Honor. He was all right most of the time. He was better than all right. We were happy together.
Honor thought of Stephen and Joe's wedding day at the register office in Cambridge. She thought of how she had sat in the front row and wilfully ignored the way they looked at each other, smiled at each other. That moment when her son had slipped the ring onto his bride's finger. She had abandoned Judaism a long time before, but she was seething at the civil ceremony. She thought of invitations she had refused, the burning jealousy in her gut masked as contempt, the height she had assumed to look down on her daughter-in-law. She had thought sometimes that Joe reminded her of Paul's wife, Wendy, pretty and domesticated. She had used that sometimes to justify her jealous dislike, but the truth was simpler and worse. In her eyes, no one would have been good enough for Stephen. Ironically, she was seeing more clearly now. "I have not been very kind to you, Joe," she said. "Oh, well." Joe was clearly embarrassed. "It's all in the past, anyway." Honor laid her head against the car window. The vibrations of the engine buzzed against her skull, down her spine, into her hips. For 10 years, Honor had thought that since Stephen, her centre of gravity, was gone, everything and everyone was gone. She had wanted the world to collapse around her, to burn away, like the letter with its Californian postmark and its airmail stickers, into ashes and dust. She had thought the tragedy was that it had not collapsed, not burned away, that she had gone on living when everything she had to live for was being erased, removed from the centre of her life, leaving her with nothing but the periphery. Incredibly, it seemed that she was moving on. She was discovering other forces of gravity, however late. When they returned to Joe's house, she switched on the laptop and typed for a long time, without thinking. It helped not being able to see the words. Chapter 32. Lydia. Lydia's first exam was French, and it was weird to come into school in the afternoon, in her uniform, but without anything but her crib sheet, a pencil case and a bottle of water, and to wait outside near the door to the hall, while all the other students in the other years were sitting in lessons. It felt as if she hadn't been in school for ages, even though it had been only a week. A week of nearly constant revision, most of it alone, some of it with Avril. Their conversation was stilted, but Avril didn't seem to notice. Lydia hadn't thought she would be really nervous for her exams, especially not for French, as French was easy. But there was something gnawing at her stomach, and she was sweating under her school jumper. Mrs. Fowler was near the entrance to the hall, directing the students where to wait in the corridor, checking their pencil cases and water bottles, reminding everyone they'd have to throw away their crib sheets before they went in. "You're taking AS?" she asked Lydia, checking her clipboard. "Wait with the sixth form, please, instead of with Year 11. Quiet outside the examination hall, please." At first, Lydia had felt silly in French lessons, as the only one wearing school uniform, but she'd got over that by October. Now, though, standing with a handful of students in jeans and T-shirts or summer dresses, separated by several metres from the other people in her year who were taking French GCSE, she felt silly again. Avril wasn't taking French and didn't have any exams till tomorrow, but Lydia knew most of the students waiting to take their exams, and it was odd not to be standing with them. Bailey stood across the corridor, clutching a bottle of water. Lydia hadn't seen her since that day before study leave. She noticed that Bailey was wearing black socks. She was also talking in a low voice with Erin, who wasn't actually rolling her eyes or curling her lip. In fact, the two of them seemed to be quite friendly. Well, Bailey must be pleased anyway. She'd seemed to want to impress Erin. Just then the two of them glanced up and caught Lydia looking at them.
Bailey blushed, and an enormous grin grew slowly on Erin's face. "Good luck," Lydia mouthed to them. Erin blew her a kiss and giggled. The sight hit Lydia like a cold weight in her stomach. A kiss? What did that mean? Had Bailey said something? Bailey's head ducked, and Erin turned to Olivia standing beside her and said something Lydia couldn't hear. "Stop the talking," called Mrs. Fowler. "And sixth form, you may enter the hall. Remember, no talking. No noise whatsoever in the examination room." "Don't be nervous," said the person behind Lydia in the queue, a lower sixth boy called Paolo. "It'll be fine." That said, I'm shit scared. He smiled at her, and then they were through the door. Lydia found her seat, with her name card on it, scratch paper already laid out waiting for her. She watched as the GCSE group filed into the room, but none of them glanced at her. They were all intent on finding their own places. It was nothing, she told herself. It was nothing. It was Erin being flamboyant, blowing her a kiss for luck. She was sitting quite near the front of the room and couldn't see anyone she knew around her. She looked over her shoulder and was tapped sharply on the other shoulder. "Keep your face forward," said Mr. Singh, and he put an exam booklet on her desk. Lydia drew in a deep breath and concentrated on writing her name and student number on the booklet. Concentrated on keeping her heart rate down, on thinking in French. Erin had probably blown 16 million kisses today. She was a big kiss blower. "You may begin," said Mr. Singh. Erin caught up with her at the end of the corridor. She had Olivia and Sophie with her, though no sign of Bailey. "How'd the A-level go?" Lydia nearly sagged with relief. "It was all right, I think. How was yours?" "It didn't go so well. I think I could have used a kiss for luck." Sophie giggled, and Lydia nearly stumbled. Erin was smiling, that mean smile that she often had. "Un baiser," said Olivia. "Isn't that how you say to A-level? Très romantique." "Where are you going now?" Erin asked her. "Going to find Bailey? Or Avril?" "I've got another exam," Lydia managed. "All right, see you later, darling." "Ta-ta!" Erin wiggled her fingers at Lydia, and both Sophie and Olivia giggled this time. Chapter 33. Joe. "Hey, neighbour." Jo looked up from her rosebush. Marcus was standing on the other side of the hedge. Her heart leapt, and she lowered her secateurs. Oscar beat her to it, though. He ran over to the hedge, clutching the bunch of dandelions he'd been picking. "I have super eyes," he told Marcus. "I am a superhero." "Well, that is fantastic," said Marcus. "Who are the flowers for? Your mummy?" "Liddy. She has exams." Iris toddled up behind him, waving 2 more dandelions clenched in her chubby fist. "I picked 2. "They look great. First exams today, eh?" Marcus looked over at Jo. "How'd they go?" "I haven't seen her since before half-term." "She's not home yet. She's probably gone for a coffee with Avril. I'm making a bouquet for her room and cooking her favourite for dinner." "And I'm helping," said Oscar. "Oscar is really into helping at the moment," said Jo. She came up closer to the hedge, close enough so that she could touch Marcus through the gap if she dared. He's been fetching and carrying stuff for Honor all week. Iris, too, when she can. They've been a real help to her. And to me. You have a bit of pollen on your cheek." Marcus reached over and brushed it off, his thumb lingering on her face. "It looks lovely." Jo held out her roses so that he could smell them. "You've got a bit of pollen too," she said, and took off her gardening glove so she could run her finger over his lower lip. He touched it with his tongue, and she whispered, "Naughty." "I've been waiting for days to be naughty," he whispered back, "but someone hasn't been free." "I'm going to be a flower girl," said Oscar. "No," said Jo. "Iris is going to be a flower girl. You're going to be a page boy. For my ex's wedding," she added to Marcus. His fiancée is coming over in a bit to measure the children for their outfits.
This is the famous au pair?
The famous au pair. You let her in the house, he said in a low voice. She shrugged. I don't have much choice. It's all very civilised.
I wouldn't find it easy to be civilised in that situation, I must admit.
He's their father, and she'll be their stepmother.
I suppose I'm protective.
He leaned over the hedge and said to Iris,
"Want to come over here for a minute?"
"I'll give you something to help you be a flower girl." "No," said Iris, raising her arms to him. He hesitated, clearly not certain whether to go with her words or her actions.
"She's going through a no phase," said Jo.
"No," Iris repeated, waving her arms at him and jumping to be picked up, until he gave in and lifted her over the hedge to his garden. Oscar raised his arms too, saying, "Me! Me!" until Marcus also lifted him over. Jo watched her lover set her son down, a little bit concerned that both of her children went so easily with a stranger. Then again, Marcus wasn't a stranger. Not to Jo. But neither was her relationship with Marcus something you could tell the children about. She thought about how angry she'd been when Richard had announced that Tatiana was moving in with him and would be spending weekends with the children. How humiliated she'd been. How wrong it felt that her children were part of this illicit relationship. It was hardly any different, was it, letting her children spend time with a man she was having sex with in secret? "We probably need to be a little bit careful," she said quietly.
"Don't worry, I'm safe with children. I've been CRB checked for my job," he said, his head turned away towards the children.
For the first time since she'd known him, his voice had an edge to it. "I didn't mean—"
"I know what you meant.
I'll only have them for a minute." They disappeared from sight behind the hedge, and Jo heard them whispering. She shot a look back at the house to see if Honor was peering out of the window or if Tatiana had turned up yet, but she didn't see anyone. Putting her glove back on, she began trimming the thorns off the early roses she cut for Lydia's room. How would people view her if they knew? Would she be the object of attention and gossip again, this time for something that she'd done herself? She remembered those horrible days after Richard had left, alone in the park, struggling to carry on as normal when she knew that everyone was talking about her. This time, would the whispers be about not poor Jo left for the au pair, but pervy Jo shagging the young neighbour? Cougar Jo carrying on with her daughter's teacher and in front of her young children? It was like an episode of one of those staged reality shows that Jo watched sometimes, guiltily knowing she should be doing something else. Oscar laughed. "Shh," she heard Marcus whisper. "Do you remember what to say?" "No," declared Iris. She couldn't see Marcus, who was hiding behind the high bit of the hedge, but she could see his arms as he lifted her little daughter over and deposited her carefully on the ground. She held an enormous bouquet of sweet peas and ferns. Iris toddled a few solemn steps towards Jo, and then held up her bouquet. "For Mummy," she said, and put it into Jo's hands. Oscar was lifted over too, holding a small bouquet of violets, added to his bunch of dandelions. He ran to her instead of copying Iris's flower girl gait. "These ones are for Lydia," he cried. "Marcus said I could have them and give them to her from me." Marcus appeared in the gap, a bit of fern on his collar. Jo, her hands full of flowers, sorry for her thoughts about cougars and reality television, said, "Thank you."
"You don't have to give them to Lydia if you don't think it's appropriate. I won't be offended."
I might say Oscar picked them. And so he did.
"But I hope you'll keep the ones from Iris."
She nodded, sniffing their perfume. She had accepted 1,000 bouquets from her children. Buttercups and daisies and dandelions in yellow or blousy fluff. But when was the last time a man had given her flowers? "I'm sorry," she said. "It frustrates me to be on the margins of your life," he said to her. "I can get tired of feeling like a dirty secret." Tatiana came round the side of the house.
Hello, my darlings, she called to the children. I'm here.
Is that her? Marcus asked.
Jo nodded.
I have to go. I'm sorry. Thanks for the flowers. Meet me later. I'll be here.
His gaze flickered to Tatiana, waiting by the side of the house, and back to Jo.
She doesn't look like much competition. Your ex is crazy.
I'll text you, she murmured, and gathered up Oscar and Iris to shepherd them back to the house. Tatiana was waiting for them by the back door. Oh, flowers, she asked Oscar, holding out her hands. So pretty. They're ladies, he said, going past her through the door on his sturdy legs.
Hello, Tatiana, said Jo, looking behind her for Richard.
I'm here alone, said Tatiana. Richard is at work. I knocked, but no one answered.
I was in the garden, and Lydia is out. I would have thought Honor would answer, though. Jo went inside. Her mother-in-law was sitting on the sofa, hands folded, gazing serenely into the middle distance. Honor, didn't you hear the door?
I thought it was a nuisance caller, said Honor.
Jo frowned at Honor, who appeared unfazed, and then shrugged at Tatiana. Would you like some tea? A cold drink?
Oh, I can get.
Tatiana took a glass out of the cabinet and filled it with cold water from the filter in the fridge. Jo, her hands full of flowers, opened a cupboard door with her foot and peered inside. And where are those vases?
Let me do it, said Tatiana.
Stretching her long body, she reached for the cupboard over the fridge.
Do you want a big one?
Actually the big one and a little one. Please. Tatiana took down a glass vase and a smaller porcelain one that had come from Jo's mother's house. Without checking with Jo, she took them to the sink and began to fill them with water. Jo watched her, suddenly remembering how there had always been arrangements of flowers in the house when Tatiana lived with them. She had always assumed that Tatiana had bought them, that it had been a little nice touch. What if they'd actually been presents for Tatiana, from Richard? These are for Lydia, Jo said, arranging the roses she had cut, along with Oscar's bouquet of dandelions and violets in the porcelain vase. She did her first exams today.
Oh, how exciting,
said Tatiana, taking a tape measure out of the pocket of her slim, cream-coloured trousers.
Iris, darling, come here. I will measure you for pretty dress. It will be pink and sparkly.
No, said Iris.
You do not like pink?
Tatiana shot Jo a look.
I thought you liked pink.
She's going through a...
Are you the au pair?
The two of them froze at Honor's voice. It was clear and commanding. Honor still sat on the sofa, gazing into the middle distance. Oscar had sat beside her.
I used to be au pair,
said Tatiana.
Now I will marry Richard next month. Are you the grandmother?
She went to Honor and held out her hand for Honor to shake. Honor did not take it.
Pashla von отсюда, blyad, которая спит чужими мужьями, she said.
Tatiana turned pale. Oscar twisted up to look at her.
What were those funny words, Ganny?
Honor turned her head to look directly at Tatiana. She raised her eyebrows expectantly.
No,
Honor said.
Yes, I mean, no, I mean, I'll go.
Tatiana shoved her tape measure back into her trousers and hurried out of the door. It swung closed behind her, and Jo heard the engine of her car starting up outside. What did you say to her? Jo asked, wide-eyed.
It was Russian,
Honor said to Oscar. And to Jo she said,
I told her to get out of your house because she was a husband-stealing whore.
Jo stared. Oscar blinked.
What's a whore?
He asked. The door opened again with a bang, and Jo jumped, ready for Tatiana to come back into the house, yelling at Honor in Russian. But it was Lydia. She threw her bag down next to the door and started for the stairs without acknowledging anyone. Jo hurried to her. How are your exams, sweetheart?
Fine.
She thumped up the stairs. and Jo heard her bedroom door slam. "It doesn't sound as if they were fine," said Honor. Her voice was entirely calm. "Why did you say that to Tatiana?" "Because it is true. And also because it galls me to see you welcoming someone like that and letting them make themselves at home. You are too accommodating for your own good, Jo." Jo bristled.
End of CD 8. CD 9.
"Are you saying that I let her come in here and steal my husband?" "No, he made his foolish choices all by himself. I am saying that now that she has done it, you have no reason to let her assume that she is in control here. Where you live." "Well, She thought of how Tatiana had known where the glasses were, and where the vases were kept. "I'm trying to be nice. There's niceness, and then there's insanity. Do you think that Lydia is upset about something?" "I'll go and check." Jo put her sweet peas in water, picked up the porcelain vase with Lydia's flowers, and went upstairs with it. Faintly from the living room she could hear Oscar asking again, "What's a whore?" Oh, God. She'd deal with that later. She knocked on Lydia's closed bedroom door. "Sweetheart, are you all right?" No answer. "Did your exams go okay?" Stomping feet, and the door opened a bare inch. "My exams were fine. There's nothing wrong with my exams. Don't worry. Can I get a little privacy for like 5 minutes, please?" "OK," said Jo. "But Oscar picked these for you to say congratulations." Lydia's hand came out and took the flowers. She made to shut the door again, but Jo put her hand out. "I'm making chicken cacciatore," she said quickly. "And you don't have any exams tomorrow morning, do you? Do you want to ring Avril and ask her if she wants to come for tea as a celebration?" "Avril didn't have exams today." "Well, that's fine. She can come anyway. Avril has a boyfriend." Jo bit her lip. "Oh, I understand. You don't understand anything." "But I do, sweetheart. I thought we hadn't seen her around very much." "Lydia, don't worry. Avril's not the type to forget who her friends are." "Isn't she?" "No," said Jo with conviction. "She's a nice girl. And you've been inseparable for ages. It's bound to feel strange when she starts seeing someone, but you can still have good times together, the two of you." "Can we?" "Of course you can. Why don't you ring her anyway and see if she's free? She probably needs a break from revision too. You don't want to work all the time, sweetheart. You'll just burn yourself out. You need to have a little bit of fun every now and then, you know." "A little bit of fun?" Lydia's face was half cut off by the door, but she was regarding Jo incredulously. "You think this is fun? You think any of this is fun?" "I can see that it's very stressful, but it's only the beginning. You've got weeks of exams yet. Be a little bit easier on yourself, darling." "I'll be easier on myself when you stop nagging me to have fun." Lydia slammed the door. Considering it had only been open an inch or two, the noise was surprising. Jo gazed at it for a few moments, then heaved a sigh and went back downstairs to send Marcus a sneaky text, and also to make up an innocuous meaning for the word whore. Chapter 34. Lydia. Mum was ridiculous. How could someone always try to see the bright side? How could she think that everything could be solved by making someone's favourite dinner? Offering her sympathy and pats on the back as if she was 5 years old. Empty platitudes promising that she and Avril would still have good times together when she didn't have a clue about how Lydia felt about Avril. Lydia was aware that she was being unfair. Her mother didn't know how she felt because she hadn't told her. But there was a certain wild freedom about striking out at her mother when she'd been worrying about veiled threats from her friends. And besides, she left her phone at home during her exam and she needed to check whether Avril had rung. All the way home she'd been picturing scenarios about Erin ringing Avril and telling her that Lydia had kissed Bailey. Imagining Erin's vicious grin and Avril's eyes widening in horror, trying to work out how she'd explain it, whether she could blame Bailey. which seemed unfair, but still Bailey had been the one to talk, hadn't she? Or another story she could make up. They were acting out a film scene. She was actually just applying lipstick. She slipped and her lips met Bailey's. She couldn't make up a story. She would have to tell the truth. She should have told the truth ages ago. Then she wouldn't be facing this now. Should have told the truth from the start. And given up the intimacy with Avril. The easy trust. The stolen touches and glances, all of which were precious. And all of which were based on a lie. Feeling sick, Lydia picked up her phone from her bed. There were no missed calls and no messages. Avril didn't know then. She sagged onto the bed in relief. She would still have to tell her, but she could do it in her own way. She'd say that she was lonely and experimenting. She'd say she'd suspected for a while. She'd say she'd never had any feelings about Avril. Of course not. They were just best friends. It would be horrible. It would be another lie, but at least things could carry on, not so different from usual. Things might even be better. Her phone beeped, and she looked more carefully at the screen. There were over 50 Facebook notifications. As she watched, it turned to 52. Her hands were cold. She clicked up her profile. The first thing she saw was a comment from Darren Raymond. "Hey, LL, I hear you're a leser now. Is that how you know what pussy tastes like?" Darren Raymond. Stupid joke. Nobody paid any attention to him. Except there were comments underneath Darren's. "OMG, is she? That explains a lot. I always thought there was something between her and A. OMFG, I never knew she is in athletics with me. Guys, I get changed in front of her all the time. This is gross." "Gross!" Lydia spat out. "It's your fat arse that's gross, Becky." She didn't want to scroll down. 52 notifications, now 53. But she did. There were pictures. Someone had posted the pic of her and Avril at Monica's party, their arms around each other's shoulders, identical cans of Strongbow in their hands, tongues stuck out at the camera. They'd put a thought bubble coming out of Lydia's head. Nice tits. Lydia scrolled down, helpless, taking in the malice and the doctored photos, the gleeful outrage and hysterical disgust. I don't mind people being gay. This is the 21st century after all, but they should say so and not make us believe they're normal people. Guys, do you think her and Avril have been doing it all this time? That's hot. She read every single one of them. Every single one. Except that more were coming in. Then she dropped her phone on her bed and stood there, staring at it, as if it were the problem. As if it were a venomous snake she was trying to work out how to kill. She understood how the internet worked. She couldn't reply in any way without making it worse. She had to see Avril. But could she? Should she, really? Avril had been tagged over and over again in the conversation. She hadn't said anything yet. Maybe that was because of shock, or because she was being loyal to Lydia, but then again she hadn't rung Lydia either. Maybe she was too busy snogging Harry. For the first time, Lydia found herself fervently wishing that Avril was in a park somewhere, behind a building, under a tree, with Harry Carter's hand up her top. She snatched up her phone again and rang her, but it went to voicemail. "Call me right away, OK?" she said. "Don't look online, just call me." She sent a text, too, to be sure, and then she pictured Avril not snogging Harry, but instead sitting with him and reading her phone. Not answering because she was too disgusted. Telling Harry about all the times she got changed in front of Lydia. All the times they'd shared a bed. The time they'd gone swimming naked together in the Rylance's pool at midnight. How they'd borrowed each other's clothes, including bras and knickers. She stuffed her phone in her back pocket and ran out of the house again, towards Avril's. Her school shoes were rubbish for running, but Lydia hardly noticed the clomp. She crossed a road in front of a car and only dimly heard the brakes squeal and the horn sound. At Avril's block, she leaned on the bell until the door buzzed open. The door to the flat was ajar, and Lydia knocked and went inside. "Avril?" Mrs. Toller was sitting on the sofa, remote in her hand. She still had her work uniform on. Or maybe she was about to start another shift. "Hi, Mrs. Toller, is Avril here?" Avril's mum squinted up at her. "She said she was spending the afternoon revising at your house." "Oh, yeah, she popped out to get a book and I thought she'd come back here. Maybe she left it at school instead." "So you have exams? Should you be gallivanting all over town?" "Just on a break. I'll probably meet her on the way back to my house. Thanks, see you later." Lydia checked the park and the shopping precinct. She checked the place by the river where they went sometimes. The play park at the back of the end of Avril's estate. At Starbucks, she caught a glimpse of a group of people wearing blue school uniforms spread over the sofas at the back, and she left quickly before anyone from her school could spot her. She checked her phone again, and there were no new messages, but there were 28 new Facebook notifications, and she had 9 new Snapchats. She didn't check any of them. Her feet brought her reluctantly back home. She wasn't stupid. She knew what she had to do. She had to close down her Facebook, delete Snapchat. No, she had to keep them so she had evidence. But evidence for what? She had to tell her mum. The thought brought a certain relief. She'd tell Mum. And Mum would be surprised, but she'd be on her side. Mum would help her figure out what to do. Inside the house, Granny H was on the sofa with Oscar and Irie. Oscar was pretending to read them a book. "Are you all right, Lydia?" said Honor without looking up. She could tell Granny H too. Granny H would be furious on her behalf. Honor couldn't do anything. Lydia wasn't even sure that Granny H knew what Facebook was, but she'd be righteously angry. She'd call Darren Raymond extraordinary names. If she told Granny H and Mum, Lydia could be at home and relax into the truth. Not always on guard, not always hiding behind a mask. She tried to imagine it. All that honesty. "Where's Mum?" "She's in the garden, I think." Lydia nodded and headed for the back door. She knew what she would do. She would find her mum, probably weeding, her hands in gloves and soil. She'd kneel down beside her, and she would hug her, and her mother would envelop her in her arms, just like she used to do when she was a little girl, when Lydia believed that she could make everything all right. She would tell her everything, out there in the garden near the roses. Her mother would give Lydia her full attention, like she used to. That time before she married Richard, when they used to talk about her father, when it felt like it was just the two of them against the world, when it felt like it was going to be that way forever. And it hadn't been. Her mum had chosen Richard instead. But maybe this time it could be. Lydia had it all planned out in her head by the time she stepped out of the back door and onto the grass. And then she stopped, because her mother wasn't by the rosebush. She was by the back hedge, near that part that was gappy, with a man. They stood close to each other, talking. His hand was on her elbow. Hers was on his shoulder. The man was Mr. Graham, from school. As she watched, Mr. Graham inclined his head and kissed her mother on her lips. Mum wrapped her arms around his neck and he pulled her closer. For the first time, a sob rose in Lydia's throat. She choked it back and turned and ran. Not into the house, around the side and down the street again in the opposite direction. Within 10 minutes, she was pounding on Bailey's door. Bailey opened it. As soon as she saw Lydia, she looked down and to the side, half a smirk on her face. "Why did you tell them?" Lydia was out of breath, more from emotion than from sprinting. Bailey didn't answer. She just kept on looking to the side. She had eyeliner on. "Who did you tell first? Erin? And then the others? Why? Did you want to make friends? Is that it? You offered them a juicy bit of information about me so that they'd like you.
I don't see why you're so upset, said Bailey. I'm not the one who's been keeping secrets about who I really am.
I tried to help you. I stood up for you. I was nice to you when nobody else was.
Yeah, because you wanted to attack me. In my own bedroom. It's gross.
Because I felt sorry for you.
Because you thought I was perverted like you, and you thought I didn't know anybody, so I would lie for you too.
Bailey met Lydia's eyes now, and her face was twisted and pink with righteous disgust.
All I did was tell the truth. If you have to face the consequences now, it's your own fault, not my problem.
But Darren Raymond, Becky Alderman, everyone knows. You told everyone. All those filthy things they said about you, and now they're saying them about me. Don't you even care? She reached out to Bailey, not sure if she wanted to grab her or shake her or hit her, anything to remind Bailey that she was real, she was a person. Bailey flinched back. "Don't touch me," she yelled. "Don't touch me, I don't like it." She slammed the door in Lydia's face.
Chapter 35.
Lydia. They were ranged against her outside the school building the next morning. A wall of blue jumpers, grey skirts and trousers, sitting, standing in clumps, leaning against the wall. All of Year 11 was taking the English language exam. Lydia passed through the school gates alone, her shoulders self-consciously straight, her chin high. She had texted her mother, invented supper at Averill's, wandered for hours around the streets of Dead Poets until dark, her thoughts going round and finding no home. She tried Averill's flat again, but she wasn't in. Every few seconds her phone beeped with a new Facebook notification, until she turned it off and went home, straight up the stairs to her bedroom, where she didn't sleep, imagining what people were saying. And here they were, outside the school waiting for their morning exam. Her eyes went immediately to Averill. As always, Averill had a gravitational force, something that meant that Lydia looked for her first, found her in a crowd. She was with Harry. His arm was around her shoulders. But they were looking at her, like everyone was looking at her. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes. She could not keep the mask in place. After years, it had deserted her. She had thought, walking here, dizzy from not having eaten or slept, that she might be able to face it out. Be breezy, nonchalant, all, oh, you never knew. That was the best way. She knew it was the best way. Instead, in the silence that surrounded her, she stared at Averill, and she knew that the hunger in her own face was so naked and raw that everyone could see it. Someone sniggered. It was the sound of over 100 Facebook posts and comments and texts and images, the sound of all the whispers, electronic and real. "Lazy Liddy," said someone. Probably Darren Raymond. But she was too busy looking at Averill, trying to read Averill's expression, to listen. "Shut up," said Averill, and she ducked under Harry's arm. She walked up to Averill. "Lids, we have to talk." "Can we watch?" called someone else, and there was laughter. Averill turned to the crowd and showed them her middle finger. "Go on, snogger." Lydia was rooted to the spot, hot and cold all at once, her mouth dry. Averill put her hands on her hips. "Shut the hell up," Averill said to the others. "It's a stupid rumour. We're best friends. I would know if she was gay." She faced Lydia. "Right, Lids? If you were gay, you would tell me." Averill, angry, was magnificent. Her eyes flashed, and her head was tilted, full of attitude, full of defiance. "It's the two of us against the world," said her stance. It had always been the two of them against the world. "You'd tell me," Averill said again. "I'd know. Right? Tell them." Lydia could not speak. No one was jeering now. No one was saying anything. They were watching, avid. Every person in her year. People she had laughed with, studied with, eaten lunch with, waiting for her to say something. There were words in her mouth, but she couldn't get them out. They were blocked there like stones. Lydia saw the exact moment when Avril realised the truth, because the colour drained out of her face. For a split second, Lydia thought she was going to faint. She reached out for her, to catch her or help her, and Avril stepped quickly back. She stepped back, just in the same way that Bailey had stepped back. There was a noise like a collective inhalation from the crowd, and the other students crept closer to them, surrounding them in a circle. "You are," whispered Avril. "Oh my God, it's true." Nudges, whispers, someone laughed. I was going to... Lydia had no idea what she was saying. "It doesn't make any difference. You lied to me. All this time you've been lying to me. I didn't. It wasn't lying. It was lying. You never told me. I trusted you with everything. I told you everything, and you never said. Never." There were tears in Avril's eyes. "Avril, She shook her head. "I thought you were my best friend. I am. You promised never to lie to me, Lydia. You promised. What else have you been lying to me about?" "I love you." The circle around them, tight and close. "Nothing," said Lydia. "I swear it, nothing. I can't deal with this. I feel like I don't know you at all." Avril looked the same way she had when Lydia had helped her pick her mother off the bathroom floor, sick and scared and exhausted, unshed tears in her eyes. "Avril," Lydia said, helpless. "Girls." Madame Fournier, the French teacher, pushed her way into the circle. She made hurrying movements with her small hands. "What are you doing? The exam is starting. It's time to go inside. Get into your places." The crowd dispersed instantly. Avril turned her back on Lydia and hurried to her place in the queue. Lydia watched her go. She watched the other students stand back to give her a wide berth. Avril did not glance in Lydia's direction. "Go, you'll be late," Madame Fournier told Lydia. "Foundation tier in the back, higher tier at the front. You're higher, aren't you? It's important that we begin exams in an orderly fashion. Quietly now, quickly. What is the matter with you? Did you not hear me? Quickly!" How was it possible that she was still holding her pencil case, her bottle of water? Lydia walked to her place in the queue, in between Marie Lavelle and Zachary Linton. They both shifted quickly, so that there was a large gap between them. She looked at her shoes, feeling the eyes of everyone on her. "Right, we will proceed into the building," announced Madame Fournier. "Silently now." Lydia's face flamed, and her head was almost too heavy to lift. In the silence, she felt them watching, heard them breathing. She could almost hear the thoughts flinging around in the air, the significance in the coughs and fidgets. Shuffling forward with the others, row by row, to her seat with her name and her number and her examination booklet, sheafs of lined paper waiting for answers. Her desk was near the front of the room. There were only 2 people ahead of her in the row, but she could feel the weight of every single person behind her where she couldn't see them, but where they could see the back of her head, the vulnerable skin of her neck. They could examine her and find her wanting, wrong, incorrect. She got out a pencil, a pen, a highlighter, and noticed that her hands were shaking and damp. An examination paper was placed on her desk. She glanced up to see Mr. Graham, and a wave of cold engulfed her. He smiled at her and moved on to give out more papers. "You may begin," said a voice, and Lydia opened her paper. It was full of words, black shapes on white. "All this time you've been lying to me. I thought you were my best friend." Behind her, the scratching of biros on paper. Someone cleared their throat. Someone uncapped their water bottle. A page was turned, then another. She saw her hands on the desk as if they belonged to someone else. Rubber-soled shoes walked between desks, spelling out a soft rhythm, voicing all the thoughts in this closed and airless room. Liar, liar, lesser, pervert. These examinations will determine your future. I feel like I don't know you at all. Lydia jumped up, scraping her chair back. She stumbled out of her seat, up the aisle, out through the door and out of the building, towards the morning light, away from the thoughts and stares and words to somewhere she could run. "Lydia!" A voice behind her, a male voice, deep and adult, not unlike how she remembered her father's. She didn't stop, but he caught up with her a few metres from the building, a hand on her elbow. "Mr. Graham." She shuddered away from his touch. "Lydia," he said, slightly out of breath, his glasses halfway down his nose. "What's the matter?" "I need to get out of here." "Are you ill? Calm down. Tell me what's wrong. You can have a break and come back. It's okay. You'll be all right." "I won't be all right. I won't be. It's all ruined." He frowned with concern and compassion. Fake, of course. "I understand there's a lot of pressure. But you can do this. I have faith in you. Can you tell me what's wrong?" All the messages, all the laughter, Avril's eyes brimming with tears. If she told Mr. Graham, he'd tell her mother. Whisper it to her in their lovers' time. "Lydia," he said, "please tell me what's happening." "You want me to tell you what's wrong?" she spat out. "Why would you understand?" "Well, I am your tutor, but if you'd rather speak to... You're also fucking my mother." She'd thrown it out, not really believing it was true, but saying it to shock, to hurt, to drive him away so he'd leave her alone. But the way he went completely still, his hand at his face, about to push up his glasses, frozen, told her that she'd been right. The realisation drove the blood from her face, dropped the earth out from under her. "Oh, my God," she gasped. "You really have? You've been fucking my mother." "Lydia, I never meant to." "You fucked her by mistake." "Calm down, please." He was looking around quickly to see if anyone had heard them, and she felt sick. "That's all you care about, keeping your secret. You don't care about me. You don't care about anything, either of you." A part of her, a part that was somehow still rational, wondered if they could hear her through the open windows of the hall. They were standing in almost exactly the same place where she had just stood with Avril. The same place they had stood all those years ago, on that first day, when they walked into school together. "Lydia, tell me why you ran out of your exam." Mr. Graham's voice was steady, trying to be reasonable. At least she'd wipe the smile off his face. "If it's because of me and Joe, that doesn't have to..." She recoiled when he said her mother's name. "Leave me alone. Just leave me the fuck alone." She wheeled away from him and off, out of the school gates and down the street, running clumsily, her hands both pressed to her chest as if she had been struck there. Chapter 36. Joe. It was incredible how lovely and peaceful the house could be without the children in it. Radio 4 played quietly on the kitchen windowsill, and Joe could hear a blackbird singing outside, probably on the apple tree. It was warm enough for all the doors and windows to be open, sending a green-scented breeze through the house. Honor was out for a walk, and it was Iris's first morning at nursery with Oscar. A trial run, and just for 2 hours, 3 days a week, 9 till 11. When the children were with Richard, the house felt empty to Joe, but 2 hours was perfect. Their scents lingered. Their games only paused, not abandoned. Iris had been happy to go, toddling in after her older brother with barely a single cheerful no. Honor might have offered to look after them. She seemed to be developing a bond with the children, which was more than Joe had ever hoped for. And Honor and Joe seemed to have come to some new understanding since they'd been to see Adam together. Honor had softened somehow. She had said, "I have not been very kind to you, Joe." And although Joe would have thought that it would take a lot more after all these years of enmity, She found that actually that one sentence of apology, of acknowledgement, was enough. Still, Honor wouldn't be with them forever. Probably not for very much longer at all. She was walking without a limp now, and would be well enough to go home soon. Besides, Jo wasn't ready to tell anyone, let alone Honor, what she was thinking of doing with her 6 hours of freedom a week. She perched on a kitchen island stool and opened the laptop, which she hardly ever used except for occasionally doing the weekly shop online, or getting tips about potty training. She'd bookmarked the Open University web page already. She couldn't afford the tuition. She couldn't really afford the extra hours for Iris in nursery. But surely she could do something to save the money. Sell the car and get a more economical one. Switch supermarkets. Not use the tumble dryer at all. With Richard remarrying, he might be amenable to selling this house, and she could find somewhere smaller for them to live. Maybe even somewhere that would be all theirs, where she would feel at ease to decorate. Where she could put up a shelf for her teacups. She was only investigating now. She wasn't committing to anything. Not yet. They had to see how Iris got on at nursery, get through Lydia's exams, work out a budget and a timetable. It was just that there was something about the way that Marcus had looked at her when she'd confessed she wanted to get that degree she'd never earned. Maybe even teach. He'd looked at her as if she could do it. As if she were a person who had more possibilities than she knew. Jo was clicking through to the courses, not wanting to look at the tuition fees yet, when her phone rang. As always, she got a warm thrill when she saw it was from Marcus. "I was just thinking of you," she answered. "Isn't it risky to ring during school hours?" "It's about Lydia," said Marcus. "And Jo's sat upright on her stool. She's walked out of her exam. She seems really upset. I thought she was ill, so I went after her, and she..." He lowered his voice. "She knows about us." "Oh, no!" Jo's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, God, that's dreadful." She tried to think of how Lydia could have found out. Had she glimpsed them through a not-closed curtain? Had she snooped on Jo's phone? Jo thought she'd been so careful, but how many other people might know too, while she'd been blissfully carrying on? "Yes," said Marcus flatly. "Dreadful. I need to go," she said. "I need to find her." "All right," said Marcus, and she hung up. She grabbed her keys, planning the route that would make her most likely to intercept Lydia on her way home from school, trying to think of what she could possibly say, when the door opened. But it wasn't Lydia. It was Honor. She was walking without her cane, and she shut the door carefully behind her, wiping her feet, although it was dry outside. "Have you seen Lydia?" Jo asked wildly. "Did she walk past you?" "I haven't," said Honor. "Doesn't she have an exam this morning?" "I've just had a call from school to say she walked out. I need to find her and make sure she's okay." The door opened a second time, and Lydia came in. Her hair swung loose from her elastic. Her eyes were rimmed with red. "Lydie," said Jo, holding out her arms. Lydia stepped around her as if she were a stone in her path and headed for the staircase. "Lydia, what's wrong?" "Please tell me." "Why do you care?" "I'm your mother. Of course I care." "No," said Lydia, without turning around. "No, you lost the right to ask me about my personal problems when you broke your promise to me." She began to climb the stairs. Jo followed her. "Lydia, it's not like that." "What's it like then?" "Are you in love?" She sneered the words. "Did you want revenge on Richard, or was it just because shagging a younger man made you feel better about yourself?" Jo fought not to argue or to crumple in shame. "I'm an adult. I can make my own choices. But let's talk about you. Promised me." Lydia stopped on the stairs, turning around so quickly that Jo put out her hands, certain her daughter was going to fall. But Lydia held on to the banister. Her knuckles were white. "Did you leave your exam because of this?" Jo asked. "It's not about the exams, so you can stop harping on about them. Don't you ever think that anything might be more important?" "Lydia, honey, you disgust me," Lydia spat. "You make me sick. You talk about love and how wonderful it is, and then you do this and it pollutes it. Everything is dirty and wrong." The last word was on a sob. Lydia ran up the stairs, one flight, then another, her feet banging on the treads, and they heard her door crashing shut at the top of the house. "Oh, God," said Jo again, her hands over her mouth. She sat on the stairs, her mind racing. The promise she had made her daughter, and almost immediately broken. This was all her fault, because she hadn't been able to control herself. Lydia had somehow found out, and it had upset her so much that she was messing up her exams, messing up her future. And the contempt in her eyes.
"Excuse me," said Honor.
Jo blinked and looked up. Honor was standing on the step beneath her. She must have heard everything. Jo swallowed down hot shame.
"Do you mind letting me past?"
Honor asked. "You can't climb."
"I've been climbing these stairs for practice for the past 3 weeks. I'd like to try to talk to my granddaughter, see if I can help."
"It's my fault," said Jo. Her voice broke. Honor put a hand on Jo's shoulder.
"Don't I keep telling you that the world isn't your responsibility? You were right, you're a grown-up. I don't know what kind of foolish promises you made to Lydia, mind.
She's disgusted with me. My little girl."
"You're not the only one in this family with secrets."
Honor put her foot on the step where Jo was sitting, and Jo moved over to let her past. Her mother-in-law climbed up, steadily but slowly, grasping the handrail. Jo listened to each step and heard the brisk rap, finally, on her daughter's door. She could hear Honor's voice, but not the words she said. She seemed to be talking for a long time. But she couldn't hear Lydia replying, and the door never opened. Eventually Honor descended.
"She won't speak with me. She says she doesn't want to speak to anyone. She just wants to be left alone. Perhaps she'll feel better when she's calmed down."
Maybe I should call Avril. She might be able to talk to her.
"Isn't she in her exam?"
Maybe Marcus would know what to say, Jo thought, and then knew she was being ridiculous. Stephen would know. Stephen and Lydia had always been so close. Even when she was a toddler, he could talk her out of tantrums. Jo put her head between her knees, squeezing back tears. Honor's hand on her shoulder again.
"Let's have a nice cup of tea," she said,
apparently without irony. Chapter 37. Lydia. The messages just keep on coming, one after another, relentless. I shouldn't turn on my phone, but I keep on hoping for something from Avril. Anything, even more angry words would be better than silence. But she hasn't got in touch. Instead, I've had the Facebook posts, the texts, the emails. I've read every one. I shouldn't, but I can't look away. There's the name-calling and the filth, some of it from people I've never even heard of, trolls and weirdos. But there are also some messages of support. Whitney, who has never spoken to me in her life, seems determined to defend me to all and sundry, and educate everyone about what it's like to be gay. Somehow the messages of support are even worse than the filthy stuff. It's like I've become an issue, a cause rather than a person. As if I've done something or am someone that has to be defended. It all underlines that from now on I will be the girl who came out by snogging the least popular girl in the school, the girl who that happened to. I'll be a label, a focus, a stereotype, someone people will whisper about when I've passed in the corridor. My name will be shorthand for a bullied lesbian. Nothing else I've ever done or felt or thought about will matter. All these people looking at me. I'm also the girl who freaked out in her exam, who ran out, didn't take it, will fail English because of it, totally fucking up my chance to go to Cambridge, which was one of the only 2 things I've ever really wanted. The other thing is Avril. I haven't rung her. She doesn't want me to. She wants nothing to do with me. I saw the revulsion in her face. Not because of who I am, but because I lied to her. I lied to her. Every day. every minute from the first time we met. I lied to her because I am a fucking coward and because I didn't trust her heart to be big enough to keep on being friends with me even if she couldn't love me too. I chose a hopeless dream instead of a real relationship. I betrayed her and everything I feel about her, and I'll never get her back. Never. That's why I look at every single message online. As penance, because I deserve it. Mum and Granny H keep on knocking at my door. Mum left a tray outside with lunch, and then, when I didn't eat that, she left another outside with dinner. I could smell the food through the door, and it made me feel sick. Mama started pleading with me to come out, to talk. She said over and over and over again how sorry she is for shagging my teacher. She thinks that's what this is all about. And I'll admit it felt good to be angry at her for it. But now I think it's so small, so desperate, so sad. Like the kiss I gave to Bailey when I wanted to be kissing Avril. Granny H came up too. 45 years she's been lonely. Is this what I have to look forward to? Being needy like Mum, or being alone like Granny H? Mostly I've been sitting on my bed looking out through the skylight, watching the clouds gather and the rain begin to fall. It hits the glass in burst circles. It's a cliché to say it looks like tears. I've been thinking a lot about Dad. How everything changed for him in a moment, too. Everything gone forever. Oscar and Irie went to bed, and after some more pleading and knocking, Mum went to bed too. I thought she'd camp outside my room, to be honest. But eventually I heard her go downstairs, heard the water running faintly. And then everything was quiet, and it was dark outside, and my phone was silent for minutes at a time. It had stopped raining. I opened my bathroom window wide, and I gathered up all of my paper cranes. They weighed hardly anything. I put them in the bathtub, and then, with a cigarette lighter, I burned them, one by one. The smoke lifted out of the window and away. I didn't understand why Granny H burned that letter she got from my grandfather all those years ago, without opening it. But I understand now. I know what I have to do to make this stop.
Chapter 38. Honour. The house came to life, as it did every morning, with high-pitched voices and the scamper of little feet. Honour was sitting on her bed, fully dressed. She had been up since 4, when she'd given up on sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw what Joe had spoken to her about, in the car, on the way home from Adam Acarelli's flat. She'd seen it every night since then. Stephen running away from his black holes. Running and running in those worn trainers, the shorts with the unravelling hem. All that sadness he had carried inside his tall body, and she had never seen it. An imperious banging on the door, and it opened. "Morning, Granny H," cried Oscar, and she felt him taking her hand. "Breakfast time! Mummy says I can put the toast in myself." She squeezed his small damp hand and let him lead her to the table, although she could do it now with her eyes closed. "Morning, Honour," said Joe, among the clatter of plates and the crinkle of the bread wrapper. "Tea will be ready in a tick." "You sound tired." "I didn't sleep much," Joe admitted. "I was too worried." "She hasn't emerged, then?" Honour asked, although she would have heard it if she had. "She hasn't made a peep. I even rang her mobile, but she didn't pick up. I don't know what to do. She's got an exam at 9:30 this morning, but I've got to take Oscar and Iris to nursery. I could let them stay at home, but Iris has only just started, and the routine—" "I'll be here," said Honour. "I'll try to talk with her again." "I'll be back by 1:15. Joe sighed, and her spoon made a musical sound against the side of the mug. "Thank you. With any luck, she'll—" "I'm making toast, Granny H. I'm spreading them with jam myself.
Iris, try to get the porridge in your mouth, please, instead of on your top. Jo put tea in front of Honor. Listen, she said quietly. You know what Lydia was talking about yesterday? About me and...
I know about it, said Honor. It's fine.
You do? It is.
Here you are. Toast.
It smelled distinctly burned. Honor picked up a slice and bit into it.
Delicious. The other piece is for me, said Oscar happily, and climbed up into his chair at Honor's right side.
You don't... Jo was nearly whispering. You don't think it's a betrayal of Stephen?
Stephen is dead, and you're alive. I don't know who it is, of course, though I fully approve of the younger man part.
Then Iris started flinging her porridge, and Jo was too busy to talk. Honor ate up her toast, every black and dry bit of it, while Jo bustled around getting the children fed and ready to go. I'll only be a quarter of an hour, she said. And then, Iris, please don't take your shoes off again. Ring me if she comes out, will you, Honor? The door shut behind them. Minutes later, Honor heard Lydia's footsteps on the stairs.
Have you been waiting until the coast is clear?
Called Honor. The footsteps hesitated, and then came down the rest of the staircase and approached.
You've been worrying your mother silly.
I know, said Lydia. She stood behind Honor, her hands on the back of Honor's chair. Honor could hear her breathing, soft and steady. She twisted her neck, but she couldn't see her face, just her blue school jumper.
Are you off?
Yes. Suddenly she wrapped her arms around Honor. She hugged her, fiercely, and hard enough to squeeze the breath from Honor's chest. Her hair like silk on the side of Honor's face, surrounding her with the familiar little girl smell of strawberries and something scorched, like the toast. I'm sorry, she whispered, her words warm on Honor's skin. Honor raised her hands to hold Lydia's arms, feeling her youth, her slender strength. Thinking of all those years when she'd been afraid to hold her granddaughter. Afraid of loving her too much. And now the girl was almost grown. I'm sorry, too, said Honor. Lydia kissed Honor's cheek. And then she was gone. Chapter 39. Jo. Marcus had rung twice last night, and once this morning before breakfast. Jo hadn't answered. It was the first time she hadn't listened to his messages right away, in a fever of anticipation. Instead, his name on the screen only brought a wave of guilt. Honor had been nice to say that she was fine with Jo having an affair, with a younger man especially, but Jo knew she had broken a promise to Lydia. She knew that the silence and the recriminations were her punishment. If Lydia ruined her future by mucking up her exams, Jo would never forgive herself. The ladies at the nursery were lovely as always, welcoming her children with smiles and open arms, but Jo was jumpy as a cat. Her phone rang just as she was leaving, and she snatched it up.
She's left just now,
Honor told her, and Jo breathed a sigh of relief. She drove to Waitrose. Lydia mocked her for thinking that food could solve everything, but they had a lot to talk about today, and in her experience, talking went much better with chocolate cake. Half an hour later, while she was juggling a cake box, a plastic bag full of milk and bread, and her car keys, her phone rang again. She leaned the cake box on her hip to answer.
Mrs. Merrifield, this is Tina Hutchinson at Woodley Grove School. I'm ringing about Lydia's attendance at examinations.
Mrs. Hutchinson, the head teacher. She was a terrifying woman, though Jo had never had any cause to be terrified of her until now. She put the cake box on the bonnet of her car. Yes, Mrs. Hutchinson, thanks for calling. We're so sorry about what happened yesterday. Lydia and I have to sit down and have a proper chat about it, and I hope that we can work it out. Can I make an appointment to come in to talk about resitting the exam she missed?
Of course. But we're obviously concerned about today's exam as well. And for Lydia's welfare, of course.
Today's?
Yes, it would be helpful if you would ring us if you knew she was going to miss an exam, so the other students don't suffer unnecessary delays.
Jo leaned against the car. She hasn't turned up for this morning's exam?
No.
But she... Jo swallowed. I have to go.
Mrs. Merrifield. Jo rang off and immediately rang Lydia. The phone went straight to voicemail. She'd started the car and disengaged the handbrake before noticing that the cake box was still on the bonnet. Her route home took her past the school. She searched the pavements as she drove, looking for Lydia. And when she arrived at home, she jumped out of the car and ran inside. "Is Lydia here?" she asked Honor, who was wiping down the breakfast table. "She left," said Honor, a frown beginning. "But where did she go? Did she say she was going to her exams?" "I don't think so. Jo ran up the 2 flights of stairs to Lydia's room. The door was open and the room was empty. Bed made, clothes hung up, books and pens arranged neatly on the desk. A smell of burning hung in the air. Even though she knew Lydia wasn't here, Jo stepped into the room as if it could tell her where her daughter had gone. On the purple bedspread lay a notebook, a blue composition book, the kind she used to use in school. It had a yellow post-it note attached to the cover, one of the ones Jo had bought her to help with her revision. "Sorry," it said in Lydia's rounded handwriting. Cold flooded Jo's body. Nearly all the pages were full of Lydia's writing. She skimmed the first page. It started with yogurt, but it was too much of a violation to read any more. She shoved it under her arm and hurried back down the stairs to Honor. "What did she tell you?" she demanded, her voice too high. "What did she tell you this morning before she left?" She had never seen Honor flustered. She just said she was off. And then she kissed me and said she was sorry." "Sorry? Like this?" Jo shoved the book with its post-it message into Honor's hands. She ran her thumbs over the cover. "What is it?" "I think it's a diary. She left it in the middle of her bed. Honor, she didn't turn up for her exam this morning." "Where would she go?" "Will you read it?" Jo asked her. "I don't want to read her diary. I don't want... It's her private thing, and I don't want to make her any more angry at me than she already is. But if you read it, she wouldn't mind so much. Please, just tell me if it says where she's gone." Honor put the diary back into Jo's hands. "You will have to read it," she said calmly. "I am blind." Jo stared at her, her unwavering gaze. "You'll read it. Time may be of the essence." There was page after page, undated, but if there were any clues, they would probably be near the end. Jo flipped through the pages of writing, catching a word here and there. Avril, but also Harry, Bailey, Darren. Who were these people? Before she settled on the last entries. It was written in biro, the handwriting messier than Lydia's normally was. So much so that Jo had to work to decipher some of the words. The messages just keep on coming, one after another, relentless. She couldn't take it in. Avril lying, Facebook. I deserve it. Burning the paper cranes. I know what I have to do to make it stop. And then the last part, on a separate page, written carefully, the biro pressing the words into the paper like embossing. I think about it all the time, Lydia had written. Deliberately, as if she had made up her mind, as if she were just marking time, doing this one last thing. I wasn't there, but I know this was how it happened. She's written about Stephen, gasped Jo. The last thing she's written about Stephen. Oh, my God, I know where she is. She dropped the book and turned for the door, but Honor grasped her arm. I'm coming with you, she said. But I'm blind and I'm useless. I'm coming with you. You may need some help. We'll go in the car, said Jo. It's not far. It will be faster. Her hand shook on the keys and was slick on the wheel. She backed out of the drive, spraying gravel. What did you learn? Honor asked, buckling her seatbelt. By feel? How had Jo not noticed that she did everything by feel? In the diary, what had she written? Jo floored the accelerator. She's fallen out with Avril. And she's being bullied.
at school and online, for being gay. She's gay. Why didn't she tell me?
She wasn't ready for you to know.
A turn taken too quickly, sliding both Joe and Honor on their seats. How do you know that?
Because she told me. And before you say anything about that, no, I did not tell you because I respected her secrets. Just as I did not tell Lydia about your secret.
Or any of us about yours, said Joe bitterly. How long have you been blind?
For some months. Before my fall.
Another turn, and then straight past houses and fences, mothers walking with children, an elderly man with 2 terriers. A car going the other way sounded its horn, warning them of their speed. She never drove down this road. She would go miles out of her way to avoid it. Yet she knew the exact place where the road turned, and the houses stopped, and the trees began, forming a shield from the noise and the drop. The branches bent over the road, making a tunnel of green, and then the car was on the bridge. Joe saw Lydia right away. Just her head and shoulders, her hair gleaming coppery against the green leaves. She was near the middle of the bridge, and she was on the wrong side of the railing. The falling side. The jumping side. Joe cried out and braked the car with a squealing of tyres. "Stay here," she gasped to Honor. "Call 999. My phone's in my bag." She leapt out of the car, engine still running, and ran to Lydia, arms outstretched. Before she could reach her, she had a sudden thought and stopped. She didn't want to frighten her, to make her lose her footing on whatever ledge was on the other side. Slowly, not taking her eyes off her daughter, she crept forward until she was at the railing. She put her hands on it. Her left hand rested on the plaque in Stephen's memory. The words pressed against her palm.
"Lydia," she said softly, carefully, using the tone she had used when she tucked Lydia into bed, the tenderness she had used when her little girl came to her in the middle of the night from a bad dream. "Lydia, it's Mum." Lydia didn't appear to hear her. She gazed out, not downwards into the railway cutting, out towards the bridge about half a mile away, which was a twin to this one. But her eyes seemed unfocused, as if she were looking at blank air. Her face had no expression. She wore her school jumper, and her hair was pulled back into that messy bun, tendrils escaping. But her body was trembling as if she were cold or afraid, trembling hard when everything else was so still. Someone had to come. Someone had to be here soon. Honor was ringing 999, and someone must have noticed what was happening, seen the girl standing ready to jump off the bridge. Joe looked around and saw no one, just the Range Rover, skewed with its door open. No houses were visible from here. All she could see was her daughter and the bridges and the trees and the drop, with the railway tracks an impossible distance below. Joe hardly dared to look away from Lydia's face, but she risked a glance over the railing at the ledge where she stood. It was about 5 inches wide, not quite the length of a full brick. Lydia was wearing her running shoes, she saw, not her school shoes. They had better grips, thank God. She wasn't holding on to anything. Her back was against the railing. Her body shook violently. She was so slender, colt-legged in her short school skirt. A breeze could blow her off. The railing was over waist height. Joe could grab her and try to haul her over, but would Lydia anticipate what she was doing and jump? Joe didn't pause to think. She stood on tiptoe, raised her leg and swung herself over the wall. Her toes touched the narrow ledge, and she let herself down onto it. First one leg, and then the other. She wore rubber-soled flats, sensible shoes for running after children, and for climbing bridges. Hanging on to the railing, never taking her gaze from Lydia, she said again, "Lydia, Liddy, it's Mum." Lydia's eyes focused. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Her teeth chattered as she said it, and Joe had to fight not to reach out and grab her. "Steady her." "Sweetheart," said Joe right away, "I am so sorry. I never meant to hurt you, or to not be there for you. This isn't about you, Mum.
This has nothing to do with you. I know. I read your diary, sweetheart. I'm sorry, but I found it on your bed and I was worried about you. I know what's been going on with you, and it breaks my heart that people can be so cruel, but it's not worth this, Lydia. It's not worth jumping.
Daddy didn't jump, said Lydia. He was trying to save someone else, said Joe. I don't want you to fall. I don't want to lose you, too. I don't want to cope with it anymore, Mum. Lydia's voice was high and weak, almost the voice of a little girl. I've been pretending for so long, and I'm tired. Maybe if I hadn't pretended, this would all be all right. But I don't think it would be. Avril never would have loved me. That's all I can think of, over and over. Lydia hung her head. A tear welled up in her eye and fell into the void below. Even if I hadn't lied, she said, I still would have lost her. I was always going to lose her, except this way I've lost her in every way, forever. Lydia, don't say it, said Lydia, turning her head so suddenly towards Joe that Joe reached out with her left hand, afraid that her daughter would lurch off the ledge. Don't say it's all going to be all right, because it isn't. I fucked it up. You don't understand. It isn't ever going to be all right again. I was going to say, said Joe softly, that I've lost a person I loved. I've lost a few, and I understand. I might not feel it exactly the same way you do, but I understand. You feel, especially at first, you feel that there's nothing left. No good things in this world. You're going to say to me that there are good things? It's what you always say. Yes, good things like you. Joe bit it back. Lydia had told her not to say everything was going to be all right. Her daughter didn't want optimism now. She didn't want to be looking on the bright side or soldiering on. She wanted a reason to live. And that was quite different. You always tell me how to feel, said Lydia. You're always trying to make me feel better. But I'm not you, Mum. I'm myself. And I'm not the same as you. I never have been. Lydia's hands were in fists, holding on to nothing. The knuckles were white. Her knees were trembling. Jo shouldn't be looking at her knees. She should be keeping eye contact. But Lydia's knees were naked, pale. There were goosebumps on her legs. They looked like the legs of a child. She remembered that whole autumn when Lydia was 4, a skinny flyaway 4, and insisted on wearing her favourite summer dress every day, without tights, even in the frost. She looked back up into Lydia's face, saw the faint mascara trails under her eyes, saw the shadow of her little girl's face overlaid on the face of this young, desperate woman. It doesn't matter how different we are, Jo said. I love you, Lydia. I love nothing and nobody more than I love you. Lydia shook her head. It doesn't matter. It might not matter to you, but it matters to me, and to Oscar, and to Iris, and to me, said Honor. Jo glanced over her shoulder just long enough to see that Honor had left the car and was standing behind them. Even though I can't climb over this damn rail and risk my life like your foolish mother, I love you, Lydia. You're the only relative I have left in this world, did you know that? The only one. And I very much hope you're not going to leave me the last of the Levinson line. Especially as I've only just begun to get to know you. I just want it to be over, said Lydia. I want it all to be over, don't you understand? I don't want to feel this way anymore. Liddy, and don't tell me it won't last, that things will get better, that I'll look back on this and laugh. You don't come to a fucking bridge about to jump off it and look back on it and laugh. You do it. You do it. You jump. Lydia lifted her foot, and Jo's heart stopped.
I met a young man who came to a bridge to jump off it, said Honor suddenly. A fucking bridge, as you say, and he looks back on it and is grateful that he didn't.
Lydia's hair fluttered around her face. A breeze blew from the railway cutting, bringing the scent of leaves and grease. She was so beautiful, Joe's daughter. I remember when you were born, Joe told her, hardly knowing what she was saying. It was the middle of the night, did I tell you that? And the ward was quiet, even though they say a maternity ward never is. I'd been in labour for hours. Your father was there, holding my hand and singing to me. He was a lot of things, your father, a lot of wonderful things, but he was a horrible singer. I was in between pushes and I was so tired. I didn't think I could make it. I was ready to call it off. Just tell the midwife that you could stay inside me, don't bother. I needed to sleep. And Stephen started singing, Isn't She Lovely? He did a Stevie Wonder impression and it was awful. Awful. I started laughing. And then the contraction came and there you were. Born in laughter. Your eyes were wide open and you were the most beautiful, beautiful thing I'd ever seen.
End of CD 9.